off. Welcome to the stream,
Yo.
everybody. Yo. For those listening, we've got Mikey, Benjamin, Nance, and myself, as well as a bunch of folks in the chat. So if people listening to us in the future, yes, this is live. We're doing it live. We've got 14 people already. We just pushed go. Wow, people are going
Yeah,
crazy
dude.
over here. Everyone's just chomping at the bit. They're like, "Wow, we want more Theory Underground stuff." Well, that's great.
Heck
I also
yeah.
have the Y left up there, the logo, because you know what? Theory Underground, Y left. We're all here. What's up, everybody? Tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and so Mikey
no
was
way.
getting yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah,
God damn it.
shit. I have
Yeah.
stuff to do. I have things to do.
Like right now.
No, tomorrow. I don't want it to be a holiday. I got work to get done, dude.
Oh, shut up. Oh, I'm so excited about Thanksgiving. It's going to be so good. Yeah, so what is everybody doing? First, let's start with Mikey because he's drunk and he's just going to get worse. So while he's semi-coherent, let's let him say something. Mikey, tell everybody about the circuit of not just enjoyment that you all go on for Thanksgiving, but also that you have to do around town.
Like my fucking like collect the food circuit.
Yeah, it's like a whole thing. It's like a scavenger hunt.
Yeah,
It's like
so
a quest that renews once per year.
so a couple years ago, I'm like, man, fuck all this cooking shit. What I'll just do a couple days before Thanksgiving, I'll just go get like the best shit from all my favorite restaurants. And so, all right, I'll go get a turkey from Honey Baked Ham, oven roasted, not smoked. Smoked is dog shit. Oven roasted is perfection. But okay, so I live in KC, so it's barbecue land. So then I go and get barbecue beans from Gates or Jack Stack. But then we got this amazing home cooking place that I took Dave to called Stroud's. Amazing mashed potatoes and gravy. So I go get the mashed potatoes and gravy from there. Then we got this pie company that makes the fucking bombest fucking pies you ever had. And so I go over there. So I just go around the town and get everything. And I'm like, I don't have to cook a motherfucking thing.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving to me.
Yeah, I feel similarly blessed, but I don't have to do the rounds. I just get to show up and there's just people passionate about food who've been doing amazing things. And so I get to have deep fried turkey tomorrow.
Oh,
What the
fuck
hell?
you. I'm jealous.
What are you doing, Benjamin?
Well, my brother's coming in from California. He's going to fly in, giving up his 70-degree apartment and flying out here where it's, below freezing and horrible. And we're going to torture him for a little bit and then we'll let him go.
Nice.
Sounds fun.
Nice. How's it going, chat? How about you all? How's it going, everybody? Great to see you all. We got all kinds of people down in here saying greetings and let's go, Mikey. And we've got some turkey emojis getting spammed in the chat. That's right. Spam your turkey emojis, folks.
Gobble, gobble, cluck, cluck. Do turkeys cluck? Or do they just gobble?
My coworker
Benjamin
hit
knows.
a fucking
Benjamin's a
turkey
bird
with
expert.
My, co-
That's what
my
they do.
coworker Pat ran
I think
over
they
a turkey
gobble.
with a work van.
That's horrific.
Well, the fucking bird shouldn't have been in the road. I don't know.
God, it serves him right. He got what he deserved.
Well, fucking man, this civilization, stay your ass out the road. Nah, Pat said the thing just like pooped into feathers.
Dude.
Like, you're a cold-blooded motherfucker, Pat.
Evan
So-
says, I have no clue what I'm doing. I have one invite, but I will decide whether I want to go anywhere on the day of.
Don't do
Yep.
it, dude. Don't do it.
Whatever you do, just take it easy. Make sure it's
I will decide whether I want to go. Don't go.
right,
We don't want you to
Dave.
go.
all right. I want to say something really quick because Mikey's got a couple things that we can kind of get into. I do want to say, look,
I want to say something.
well, let me finish. Thanksgiving is one of those holidays. People usually take the side of it's Halloween or it's Christmas. Most of the people I love prefer Halloween. I prefer Christmas, but I just like the whole thing. For me, I've always thought the three should basically roll into one another. It's a whole period of dark, cold death, and that we should turn it into love and warmth. And I think that the lights should go up for Halloween and then maybe change colors over time, but the light should never go away until at least the end of December. And I think that I don't know. I think that it should all go together. Like you have the giant skeletons in the yard, and then later you put the hat on them. But they can have a turkey or something. Like the point is just let these holidays go together. And then I'll just say this: even if we don't say that we can just mix it all up, I'll just say tomorrow's Thanksgiving. I'm very grateful for you guys. I'm very happy about this year. I'm feeling really great about things. I'm excited for the 2-year anniversary on December 6th. I don't know if Benjamin's going to actually be able to make it because he's going to be in Britain at the time. So I'm glad that we get together today. It's a special day. So cheers.
So was that cheers? Was that your way of telling us that you're an uber fan of The Nightmare Before Christmas?
I think The Nightmare Before Christmas makes it possible to bridge all of these holidays. Yes.
All right,
into one universe.
You could have led with that. Gotcha.
Okay.
So, before we get too far into the stream, about 5 minutes ago, I made a insensitive joke about a coworker running over a turkey with a work van. Should we go ahead and stop the stream and start again in case Draco sees it? Because God knows we don't need him to cry on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work on my sensitivity.
Yes. All
right, restart stream.
We definitely want to restart. No, we probably just need to warn everybody. Look, if you're really excited for a vegan Thanksgiving, there's not going to be a vegan Thanksgiving here. But Anne is a vegan, and we're both doing stuff tomorrow, so there'll be some stuff for her.
Just add a trigger warning to the fucking thumbnail. If hearing about turkeys getting hit by a fucking oncoming traffic is not your thing, this is not the stream for you.
The following stream contains stories involving animal cruelty.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Yeah, man. Dead animals. Dead animals. He's turkey hunting.
Yeah, I was like, wait, where is it? Quick, we gotta get it. Was that what you wanted to talk about, Mikey?
Well, yeah. So you say you got stuff for me, but as you can tell, I need a refill on my Jack and Coke. So I'll be back in like 2 minutes.
All right, enjoy. Mikey is on one, said Edward.
He's got his swerve on.
Hey, you ain't seen nothing yet. I'm only 2 in. Let me get 4 in.
Mikey's never been drunk on stream before. In fact, I don't even know that he's ever been drunk. This is his first time. This is Mikey's first time drinking. Yeah,
ever, dude.
So you saw Gladiator 2, Benjamin. How was it?
Well, I think it's interesting as an example of what Ridley Scott thinks of the United States. As Roman history, it's awful. I would never watch it for Roman history. And we could have 2 seemingly separate conversations, one about the United States, the other about Roman history, but they'd have intersections. After all, many of the reasons he distorts the Roman history is to make points about the contemporary United States, right? Why are these Libyan, Syrian, Severan emperors blonde and extremely pale? Well, because they need to remind you of Donald Trump if he were very young and possibly not heteronormative.
Yes. Actually, you shouldn't like them. You should think that the holy, not holy, but just the Roman Empire is going to.
That one's bad too.
Yeah, that one too. But
also bad.
No, but yeah, you should think the Roman Empire is going to shit because look, they're really like gay, spoiled brats, right? Like that is the vibe. Like it's like, oh look, these are just a couple of. It's like Joffrey, but gayer.
So it's like Megalopolis and the Shia LaBeouf character. I haven't seen it yet, Benjamin. I almost watched it last night on fmovies-hd.io. I wasn't going to go to the theater.
Oddly
but,
specific. Yeah.
yeah. But I have seen the first Gladiator, and I told Dave, I think Zack Snyder and Ridley Scott have the same version of America. They just approach it from almost opposing kind of ideological standpoints. Because Zack Snyder's Rome, I think every movie Zack Snyder makes is also about this kind of like fantastical version of the empire, and it's, you know, sexy men in their underwear defend their virgins and their fields of wheat from the barbarians. And I think that's like the same vision that Ridley Scott has, and they're just kind of articulating it. Ridley Scott is doing this kind of standard American liberal thing, and Zack Snyder is kind of doing like the standard American libertarian articulation of that fantasy. I think.
Yeah, there's
anyway.
definitely a two-headed critique of woke stuff in Gladiator 2. So
Yeah.
one is the young guy who turns out to be Lucius Verus, the long-lost grandson of Marcus Aurelius,
Right.
right? He is initially an enemy of Rome. He opens the film fighting to defend an obscure city that for some reason or other hasn't yet been integrated into the empire. He hates everything Roman, and he has to learn and confront the fact that he is a Roman, and not only is he a Roman, but he comes from this blue blood family. And he has to find a way to, instead of opposing the Roman dream, to find a new way of iterating it, to find another way of understanding it, conceptualizing it, and acting on its behalf. And that's what Ridley Scott wants millennials and Zoomers to do. Stop opposing the United States, stop opposing the American dream, find a way to revive it instead of negating it. That's what he wants.
Sublate it.
Yeah. And then you've
We
got the
must do
Denzel
this.
Washington character who's playing Macronus. And he's in there to be the person who is using the woke politics to advance. He's the Uncle Tom character who is just interested in getting the benefits of being welcomed into the Roman elite for himself, but doesn't care at all about or believe in any possibility of sharing those benefits more broadly with the whole population.
Mm.
And he's the big bad in this movie. It's not so much the emperors, because they're childlike and they're incompetent and they're easy enough to bamboozle and get rid of. He's really the big bad in this film, because he's the one who can manipulate that bad situation to his advantage while pretending to do it on behalf of everybody else. He's
Right.
really in there to play like a Barack Obama figure in this film.
Wait, Denzel Washington is?
Yeah. Yeah.
You see-
but it's a critique of that figure. It's a critique of Barack Obama.
That's surprising. Coming from Ridley
Whoa.
Scott, that's pretty bold of him.
What's
It
the
might just be a
comparison?
critique of Clarence Thomas, but I think it also is a critique of Barack Obama.
what,
I think it
what-
definitely applies, whether he intended it to be or not. Maybe we don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Well, I watched it. I definitely didn't think of Obama, not even once. Except I guess he's black. But beyond that, what's the what's the comparison here, or the
Well,
analogy?
he's suggesting that he's going to help affect this positive change. And he's very savvy, he's very clever, he has a lot of talents and skills, but he doesn't really believe in a possibility of radical change, right? So when the question of the dream comes up, right, he doesn't believe in the possibility of the dream. He thinks that really ultimately it just comes down to power and might makes right. And so while he will prattle in public about trying to bring about a positive change, and he'll position himself as the one who can get rid of these bad emperors, right? In practice, he doesn't actually believe in any real possibility. And so he has nothing ultimately to offer. He's the establishment Democrat. So it could be Kamala Harris, could be anybody really, right? But because he's opposed to the blonde, pale emperors, he's opposed to the Republicans, who for Ridley Scott are just stupid and useless and crazy and nuts, right? For him, that's the Republicans. And then the Democrats are the Denzel Washington character, shifty, scheming, not really believing in the possibility of this country, not leading it ultimately anywhere any better. And then you, millennial, you're supposed to realize that you are the inheritor of the dream of the founding fathers, and you're meant to find a way of reviving it. You know, this is 87-year-old Ridley Scott going, come on, take the car keys, kids. Stop
Benjamin,
these people.
does Denzel drone strike anybody?
Well, Denzel does murder both of the emperors himself in this film.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Of course, the real life Macronus did not do that. If we start going into the Severins and the actual Roman history, I'll go on for some time about that.
Yeah,
You
because
guys have
he
to like
don't give a fuck
unlock
about
that.
he don't. Ridley Scott don't give a fuck about historical accuracy, does he?
No, he doesn't care about any of that. I mean,
Yeah.
I like Roman history, so I care, and I could
Mhm.
talk about it for a long time, but I'm not going to subject people to that unless they want it.
It's like how you know the demons can't get inside your house unless you invite them in. That's kind of what just happened here. Like,
vampires, yeah.
oh, sorry, the vampires. Yeah, that's what just happened. Benjamin said, "Do you want me to talk Roman history?"
Because I'll do it, but once I
I'll
start
do
doing it, there's no telling how long I'll do that for.
There might not be an off button. Yeah. Well, my goal here is to bring you back. I guess, yeah, I probably can't get you here on the actual second anniversary, but we could probably get you in a few days after once you're back and settled in. It would be a lot of fun to do a stream. I was thinking of titling it something like "Why Are Men Always Thinking About the Roman Empire?" Right? Because that's a meme. It's a meme that became popular this year. And it's funny because to me, it's like, I just don't spend a lot of time thinking about the Roman Empire, but apparently it's a popular thing. If women ask the men in their lives, that a lot of men go, yeah, I think about, the question is supposed to be like, when's the last time you thought about the Roman Empire? And then like the questions or the answers are always like, yeah, a few days ago or something like that. And it's like, what? And so I'm over here like, really? I didn't know that. But then of course it makes sense with Benjamin. What about you guys? Nance, Mikey,
all I
you guys
can
think
say
about
is
the
that-
Roman Empire?
Not a lot, but I know Kanye does because he went out of his way to confuse them with the Spartans. Remember the line? I keep it 300, like the Romans. You mean the Spartans? Like somebody
You wanted
that's
to
where it's
rhyme
like,
it with Trojans in that.
I know. God damn it! Sometimes
Yeah.
you gotta fuck historical accuracy when a rhyme has to be made.
Or a near rhyme in that case.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tyler, how you
I
doing,
mean-
man?
Good. I don't ever think about the Romans, but a lot of friends and family members in my life said, yeah, like quite a bit. Couple times a day.
Ever? You don't ever think about
I
them?
do sometimes, but hardly ever.
Yeah.
I get suspicious when people say they never think about them. I mean, you don't have to think about them within the last 24 hours, but come on.
That's like-
in the
that's like
last
a
month, not even once.
I rewatched Caligula not too long ago. Dave, that's a movie for you. Watch Caligula.
I know.
I like that
I
show
know.
Raised by Wolves that was on HBO for I think 2 seasons, and then they canceled it because HBO cancels everything. But you can find it if you brave the 7 seas. It's out there on the
HBO
internet.
show Rome that came out 20 years ago was
Yeah.
actually pretty good in terms of Roman culture, Roman terminology, Roman ways of thinking. Certainly much better than any Ridley Scott film
Yeah.
for that.
Benjamin, what's the most accurate like depiction of Rome you've ever seen?
On film,
Yeah.
probably that HBO show, to be honest
Really?
with you.
Okay.
I would take that. Spartacus Blood and Sand, the early seasons of Spartacus were not bad. One of the things they did that was interesting is that they modified the English that all of the actors spoke to make it have the cadence of Latin. So if you read in Latin a sentence, often the words are arranged in an order that's a little unusual for us, and they tried to give you that otherworldly Latin feeling while still having the dialogue in English by messing around with the word order.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, I
One
have
of the actors who dies early in Gladiator 2 was from Spartacus and was cast in this film in part to, I think, in some way, thank him for having done a good job, or to acknowledge in some way that he had been particularly good in that show.
I was rewatching the first Gladiator last night. What do you think of that one?
The first one has a lot of similar problems. If you start going into the history of Commodus and that period of Roman history, there's a lot of issues. Though this one is worse. In terms of Roman accuracy, this one is somehow even worse than the first one, and by a significant ways. This one, he's reached a stage of just not caring at all. The thing is, Commodus is an emperor who actually did fight in the arena. So there was some kind of basis for making it all about the arena. But to do that with Carcalla and Gaeta, that doesn't make any sense. Not even a little.
Can you please?
But it's a film about gladiators, so they have to do it like that.
Can you please tell me that at one point in Roman history they filled the Colosseum with water and had sharks in there?
That is a story that is potentially true.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's potentially
Whoa.
true.
Whoa.
You can never be totally sure about these things, and there are people who will argue about these stories, but there's a basis for thinking that happened.
Then it's
what
part
about
of the
rhinos?
mythos.
Did they have rhinos?
It's in an account that is potentially trustworthy. They used all kinds of exotic beasts, all kinds. Of course, it could be expensive, and sometimes you'd have issues transporting beasts because sometimes you had to get them from very far away. Some of these animals had to be imported from outside of Roman territory and brought in, but we do have evidence that animals from well outside Roman territory were brought into Rome for use in games.
God damn, that's all right. Oh, Benjamin, did you hear about what the original script was going to be for Gladiator 2?
What?
Okay, so this is true. As far as unless somebody really pulled some Baudrillard simulation on me, as far as I can tell, this really was going to be Ridley Scott wanted to do a sequel where it starts with Maximus waking up in the afterlife, and he has to fight gods, and then he has to go to Hephaestus, which makes no fucking sense because he's a Greek god, right? But all the Roman gods are there, and then Hephaestus is there, and so then he has a battle with the gods, and then they throw him back to Earth 20 years later in the flesh, and so now he's back in Rome. I shit you not, this was going to be the sequel.
Sounds like he wanted to do, God of War. Sounds like he was jealous.
I'm like, I need the fucking Rick and Morty portal gun. I need to go to the universe where that's the fucking sequel. I need a 4K copy of that right now.
I would love to see current day, or what's his name, Russell
Crowe.
Russell Crowe playing that role. That'd be
bloated as fuck, all drunk and whatever the fuck is going on with him. He ain't in Maximus mode anymore. I ain't got room to talk, but goddamn, we don't need him reprising the role at this point.
So we've got some comments I'm going to read off. Fail Frista says, if you didn't think of the Roman Empire this week, you're either not interested in history of society or are a girl. So, that might be it. I think I might just be a girl. I might be a girl, but I like how Benjamin framed it. He's basically saying but if you don't ever think about it. And I was thinking what Anne says, she doesn't trust adults that say they don't eat veggies. If you're an adult that says I don't eat veggies, she just doesn't trust you. And it sounds kind of similar. If you're an adult who doesn't eat veggies and you never think about the Roman Empire, then you've officially gotten crossed off the list by both Anne and Benjamin. Now, could I really take you seriously? But
it shows what it shows me. If you say never, it suggests a concern about being right-coded.
Mm.
Oh, really?
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, because the
Really?
Roman Empire has become right-coded, which is unfortunate because it belongs to all of us. But in recent years, because of the kinds of Twitter accounts that identify with it, and because of the Stoic posting that the right tends to do, the Roman Empire is right coded. So people will try to show that they're not right coded by saying that they never think about it or have nothing to do with it. But this isn't true. It belongs to all of us. It's there all the time in so many little ways. Every time you have to decide whether or not you're going to use Times New Roman or Palatino linotype or Constantia. How many other fonts? There's definitely more.
Yeah. There's a lot of fonts. It turns out so you're gonna encounter Rome there at least. But actually, there's a really great question here from Mandy. What has thinking about the Romans ever done for us? And so I figured nobody would be better equipped to answer this than you, Benjamin.
I
Can
mean,
I
we
just
live in
chime
a
in first?
republic.
First off, just real
Go
quick,
ahead.
it gets us thinking about how dog shit our robes are compared to theirs.
They had better roads.
They had better
They had
robes,
better concrete.
better concrete.
Really?
Their concrete gets stronger when exposed to water. No one has been able to figure out how or why for a long, long time. The recipe for it is lost.
What?
Damn.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, but what you were saying, your answer though had something to do with republics. What
Yeah,
were you
we
gonna say
live in a
about that?
republic. We live in a republic. So, if you think that any kind of representative democracy of any sort, or even, mixed, more participatory democracy of any sort has any kind of value or holds any interest for you, then you have to think about the Romans, because Roman republicanism is rooted in every tradition for thinking about how to set up that kind of state, no matter what, left, right, center, however it is that you would approach that. Our concept of freedom, our concept of liberty, the concept of equality, all of these things have roots in Greco-Roman political theory. All of them develop out of very, very old Roman concepts uh, and Greek concepts, which the Romans popularized and distributed. It's very difficult, to act like we have nothing to do with the Romans. Whether you like or don't like this society, it completely is post-Roman. It's like saying I don't like capitalism. I mean, sure, but it's everywhere. It structures everything, right? In the same way, the Roman Empire is completely everywhere. It structures everything. Everything is in some way downstream from it or in reaction to it, including the stuff which purports to be the most not like it. You can't get away from it. And it's not just in Western, civilization or Western Europe. It's also the Byzantines. It's the Middle East. It's North Africa. It's Islam. Where does Islamic political theory and theology, how does it develop? It develops in dialogue with Greco-Roman texts from all of the Greco-Roman cities that the Arabs conquered and occupied. Islamic civilization is to a very large degree the Arabs coming in, taking these old Roman cities with old Roman structures and finding ways of operating them. The Russian state. Russia is the third Rome, famously. The Tsar is the Caesar. The Kaiser is the Caesar. All of this stuff is necessarily connected, both explicitly and in all kinds of ways that aren't explicit, that you're only going to notice if you have spent some time with this stuff.
Brian is first of all, Brian, you can jump in on this call if you want. You should have got an email about it, but he said, I can't believe they made a sequel to Gladiator. This is not easy to accept. Then he said, I'm going to read a few of these off. He said, I dislike how in every historical film, the implicit message is that people then were just like us, same desires, tastes, etc. That's half true at best. He said, if Byzantium or the Catholic Church or America count as Rome, it's a lot easier to think about Rome. And then finally, he said, indeed, this is why Romanticism is not inherently backward looking, but implicit in every vision of the future. Every revolution has imagined the past in some way so as to imagine another future.
Well, we are both like the Romans and not like the Romans. We have a lot of concepts that originated with them, but which we've taken in directions which are somewhat different from the directions that they originally took those concepts. Some of these states and some of these places have more overlap with them than others. Some of them claim to have more overlap than they in fact have, while others pretend that they have less overlap than they in fact have. It has to be understood, I think, in a dialectical way. To say that all of these people are precisely the same as the Romans would, of course, be false. But to say that they have nothing to do with the Romans would be just as false and perhaps even more so. Uh, the Gladiator films are very presentist. They project onto the Romans very, very contemporary and modern and very American ways of thinking, which would be totally foreign to them. At the same time, I have seen some portrayals of Roman culture that on screen that have been closer to what you will find if you read old Roman texts. The HBO series Rome from the 2000s had a lot of historian involvement and included a real effort to give you a sense of the place. It follows two Roman soldiers and their banter and discussions and interactions with family and with members of the plebeian class as well as the patrician class, give you a little bit more of a well-rounded view.
Mm.
And there really was an effort to try to get that crisis across, to try to have a show which followed the actual crisis of the late Roman Republic. Whereas with Gladiator, Ridley Scott has something he wants to say about the United States, and he's chosen to say it with an ancient Rome aesthetic.
Mm.
Very different.
You know, one thing that I've thought about this off and on for years. I almost wrote a blog post about it at one point. So it's weird though, right? Hollywood has no problem depicting the Greeks. Hollywood has no problem depicting Rome. Has no problem depicting feudal Japan. Has no problem depicting the Nazis. You know what Hollywood will never fucking make? An honest, good faith depiction of the Soviet Union. It stays clear of that shit. It will not show the Russian Revolution. It will not show. It doesn't even. And with Hitler, like, okay, somebody could say, well, it doesn't do like a real, like, good faith, like some fascists could say, they don't do a good faith depiction of Hitler. Yeah, but it shows Hitler. Even if it's satire, it shows Hitler. They don't want to show Stalin. They don't want to show any of them motherfuckers at all, not even to mock them. And so it's funny to me how Hollywood has always stayed clear of that shit. And sometimes the closest they'll get is Rocky 4 or fucking Navy SEAL or is that it? Navy SEALs, the old, like, they'll do these cliche like Russian invasion movies or whatever. But they don't actually do any kind of historical. Yeah, Nance. I just think it's fucking weird. Like where it's, and it tells you something. Like they don't want Americans thinking about
Nance
that
is going to
shit.
say the Death of Stalin movie came out.
Death of Stalin movie, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was weird because it felt oddly sympathetic. And it was a comedy and it was a farce and it was like, let's ridicule, but it also felt oddly sympathetic, like they were having fun with Trotsky and Stalin.
But is that,
but
is
I
that
think
the
you're right,
exception
Mikey. Yeah.
that proves the rule. Like, because when
I
it
think
came
it is,
out,
yeah.
it stood out. I'm like, holy fuck, they did one where they
Yeah.
kind of show it. But I do. I think it's a great case of exception proves. I mean, Benjamin,
Yeah.
why do you think? I mean, maybe the answer is easy, but why won't Hollywood do any good faith depiction of the Soviet Union and its history?
There have been a few films about the Russian Revolution, but they are made from decidedly Western points of view. I'm thinking about, there was an old one a long while ago. Dr. Zhivago.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah. Or
That's a classic.
Reds. There are a few of these very mostly older films, but Death of Stalin would be more contemporary. There have been a few. It's difficult to do it politically. I think that for the most part, Hollywood is left liberal, but not state socialist.
Mm-hmm.
And in part because there was a purge of Hollywood that reduced the confidence with which people could make those kinds of films.
Like the Red Scare in the 50s and shit with McCarthy.
Yeah,
or...
they've made films
McCarthyism.
about the Red Scare. They've been willing to make films about that experience. There was one with Bryan Cranston not so long ago. What was that? film called?
Trumbo.
Trumbo, right? Yeah.
I just feel like a movie or even like a series that engaged with Soviet Russian history in a way that wasn't just Western propaganda, but also it doesn't have to be Soviet propaganda either. It's just something that did its best to just present the history. I think that would, like, I wish Americans had something like that they could watch.
Yeah, it's difficult because even now it's very contentious. Though at this point, if you wanted to do it, because so much of the Soviet archive material has come out and been made accessible to people, it could, in principle, be done to a much
Mhm.
greater degree than would have been the case at earlier points.
Have any of you guys watched? I don't even know the name of that film, but it's in Pervert's Guide to Ideology. That was the Russian recounting of World War II.
I haven't seen it. I want to see that.
It looks awesome.
Yeah.
Now, the Russians have made
Dragon-
a fair number of films about World War II. You could certainly find a lot of Russian language films about it.
Dragon Sabrev in the chat said, "What about the old movie 10 Days That Shook the World, which is about an American journalist and I think a Soviet, like, I don't know, but yeah, it's during the October Revolution, so
Oh, shit.
that
Okay.
looks cool. But here's the thing, you don't
Yeah, it's from the
get like,
20s.
but you don't get movies, well, blockbusters, right?
You get
don't
what
get.
I'm saying, Dave, right?
I want psychological thriller action, fucking high budget blockbuster movies that make me care about historical periods. Like, come on. And the point is we don't have that kind of thing for Soviet Russia. No, we don't.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
Okay,
you
this
get
is-
stuff like Anastasia.
Have you heard of a computer game called Hammer and Sickle?
I haven't.
That's, I mean, it's like it's sympathetic to, you are like a Soviet agent, but it's also not romanticizing or glorifying, it's like a realistic depiction of you as the Soviet protagonist, and you are like, under the gaze of the Soviet state, but you're also under the gaze of the Americans and the other actors. It's very kind of like gray morality.
Okay.
But you do try to be a kind of, you have to figure out what's going on and who's on what side. And anyway, like I think it was, I'm trying to remember if it was made in America or some other Western country, but it's a rare example of like a very sympathetic, but also not overly simplistic plot that is like, you're in, I think, occupied Germany as a Soviet agent.
I guess that's what I'd like to see some contemporary film or TV show do, where it's like, no, it doesn't have to be propaganda for either side. Just depict the Russians as people having to deal with political situations. Even if even with Stalin, somebody did, terrible shit, still depict them as a person making fucking decisions and shit. Like they instead of just the 80s cliche, whenever Russians pop up, they bad. I break you, right? It's the Rocky. They're stone cold. They don't have fucking feelings. They don't have, that they're never depicted more beyond that caricature. And so I think it would be fucking good. Like, just because, man, like, whether it's like a diehard tanky or whether it's just your biggest anti-communist, like, both of them need to watch a film that depicts what happened through a fucking human lens. Like, these are human beings trying to make a certain type of society. Here's the motivations and the structural situations they're in that force them to do some bad shit while aspiring to some good shit. I just would like to see a complex depiction of all that.
There is
But
a game called Crisis in the Kremlin, which puts you in the position of, Gorbachev in the 80s, and you're given a series of decisions to make, and you have to try to save the Soviet Union from collapse. And it's an incredibly difficult game because actually saving the Soviet Union is very hard, and there are all sorts of ways you can lose. Very simple game,
Okay.
very cheap on Steam.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I have to check that out.
So lots of great recommendations in the chat. Shout out to everybody who shared those. There's a couple other ones that I just they didn't come to mind. Burned by the Sun, Enemy at the Gates, and also Chernobyl. Yeah, I wanted to.
Yeah, that was good.
You
As
saw it?
far as I remember. I mean, yeah, I
Okay.
watched it like when I got home from work and shit, so I don't remember how fucking like, and I don't know the historical inaccuracies and shit. But as far as the TV show goes, it was good.
All right, so I kind of want to. I don't know if I should do this right now, but Mikey's sloppy. I could probably make anything happen. Fucking let's just go. Let's just go there. So we talked a little bit about history in Rome. Now I want to talk about culture war, and I don't know how much you actually want to say, Mikey, but I mean I could reiterate what you told me on the phone today.
I mean, look, I'll just say it. Like, look, like there's people in my life that I've known. I'm not going to name names or get into that, because that's private shit, and they don't sign up to be, name dropped on streams and shit. But I will say, like, people that I fucking love, who have been lifelong Democrats, were very happy that Trump won, and it's one of these things that makes me like when they tell me this, and it's weird. They're like, I gotta break the news to you, like they're gonna fucking divorce me or some shit. I'm like, what? They're like, I'm happy that Trump won. And I'm like, what the fuck? You're a Trump guy? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, do you disown me? I'm like, what do you think I am? Like a fucking card carrying Democrat? Like, I get it. Like, I mean, shit. Like, my attitude towards the Democrats is take your fucking L because you fucking lost it. He didn't win it.
Yeah.
You fucking lost it. So learn a fucking lesson for once in your fucking life. You stubborn motherfuckers. You just stubborn, stupid motherfuckers who just fuck up every fucking chance you have at getting ahead. You fucking dipshits. So yeah, take your fucking L and maybe you'll learn from it this time. Probably not because you're a stubborn bitch and you motherfuckers don't learn a goddamn thing. So, fuck it. Like, just let fucking Republicans win until the fucking apocalypse. Because you motherfuckers can't fucking regroup and re-strategize and reorganize. Because, no, if you don't like Kamala, you Nazi, 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 Nazi. Okay, well, keep playing that shit and keep fucking losing. And I'm going to sit back and laugh as you motherfuckers lose. Because motherfuckers like me and motherfuckers, so many different types of people been trying to tell you motherfuckers for years, you have got to break your fucking bullshit, your woke shit, your identity politics shit, your corporatism shit. You motherfuckers are done. And unless you fucking regroup and learn your fucking lesson, you're going to keep being done. Your death is just going to be prolonged for decades because you motherfuckers can't recalibrate. Learn a fucking lesson, right? So when people who I know who have been Democrats and have hated Republicans, hated Reagan, hated Bush Sr., hated W. Bush, hated Romney, hated every motherfucker, hated McCain, Sarah Palin, all them motherfuckers, hated Trump first time. When these motherfuckers have gone to supporting Trump and glad he won and Kamala didn't, man, it's like hell froze over. And I'm sitting there going, should have let us have Bernie. Should have backed Bernie. You motherfuckers wouldn't be in this situation if you'd actually done anything to help the working fucking class. And instead of doing this fucking white versus black or trans versus cis and all this fucking shit that you try to push, if you had actually done some class solidarity shit and let Bernie do his thing first time round, you motherfuckers wouldn't have been in this situation. But no, you motherfuckers don't want to do that. You don't want to really let the working class have shit. We used to have crumbs in the 50s and 60s. Now, after Reagan, you motherfuckers are Reaganites, and you don't want to fucking say a goddamn thing about it. You're fucking neoliberals masquerading as motherfuckers who care about me. You don't give a fuck about me. You don't give a fuck about my mom. You don't give a fuck about my friends. You don't give a fuck about anybody that I love. Now, the Republicans don't give a fuck, but I know that. I know that. That's them. They're doing them. You motherfuckers are shady, trying to fucking tell all of us how much you love us and care about. You don't give a goddamn about us. And you can throw this shit, oh, Biden's the most working class president. Fuck you. I don't fucking feel shit. My life ain't no fucking better. So until you motherfuckers are like, Motherfuckers want more. They want to work. We want to consume more. We want to work less. To quote our friend here, right? Unless you motherfuckers tap into that, fuck you. And so, and just so motherfuckers are clear, the guy that I'm talking about who hates the fucking Democrats, my best friend, yo, he's black, and he's hated fucking the Republicans his whole fucking life. And when somebody like him has a change of heart, I take notice, because him becoming, and like I was like, "Are you a Republican?" He's like, "No, I fucking hate the Republicans still. I'll switch on them at the drop of a dime." But fuck the Democrats right now. Fuck all their agenda. Fuck all this shit. I'm not with any of it. And I don't hate Trump. That dude ain't a fascist. He ain't a fucking the racist the way like. And this is a black man who's lived in this fucking country 45 years, who switched, and that's how much he's fed up with the Democrats. And I've got white working class friends who have made the switch. I've got Asian friends who have made the switch. I know women who have made the switch. And okay, so I guess we're all fascists now. Everybody's a fucking fascist in this country. We all want Hitler. Like that's the fucking mess. No, it's we don't buy your bullshit. And look, I'll be honest, I didn't vote for anybody because I'm fucking done. Fuck you motherfuckers. I ain't voting. Right? First time in my life I didn't vote. I don't give a fuck. No thanks. But I can sit here and say, take your fucking medicine, learn a fucking lesson. Yeah. And if you don't, then fuck you. They'll beat you motherfuckers every fucking election from here on out if you don't switch your shit. Nobody wants your fucking woke shit. Oh, he used the word woke. Oh my God. He said the word. You can't. No. Fuck statistics. Fuck all that shit, the analyst shit. What working class people are fucking fed up with is your woke bullshit. Nobody wants to hear that shit anymore. Okay, so guess what, college campus kids? You can keep that shit and you can keep it in your fucking safe space and be a little bitch and sit over there and cry all you fucking want. But real motherfuckers, the rest of the population ain't feeling your shit. We're not voting for it. We're not supporting it. So get the fuck out of our face with this shit and learn a fucking lesson. This ain't the way forward. I'm all for, and this is the liberal in me. I'm all for motherfuckers being accepted for their ways of life and their identities and all that shit. I want to live in a world where people can be their fucking self without worrying about, I hate that shit. Leave people the fuck alone. Let them do them. Let them live their fucking life. I've always been about that shit. I'm always going to be about that shit. When I see the reactionaries and shit over on Twitter, I'm like, man, y'all some bitch ass motherfuckers. Worrying about what other people do, always being racist, having some transphobic shit, like real transphobic shit, right? Being homophobic. I hate all that shit. I always have. Let people live their fucking life. But the woke shit is, you motherfuckers act like it doesn't exist. You guys are making this up. This is a right wing. No, it tells working class people to shut the fuck up and listen to the elites. And if you don't, you're Hitler. If that's your approach, then just prepare to lose, motherfucker. That's all you got in your fucking future. All right, I'll stop. Don't give me no fucking Jack and Coke while I'm on stream, motherfuckers. No. Or a Black and Mild. It's all the Black and Mild's fault. No, I'm saying because that's the thing is like motherfuckers are like, oh, you're against the Democrats, so you don't accept people, or you don't. Man, shut the fuck up. I want everybody to get to live their fucking life without having to deal with bullshit. Right? Sorry, like I'm all for that. That's not the agenda. The blue check mark thing is this PMC fucking, I'm an elitist, I know better than you, shut the fuck up. I'm sorry. I work with fucking working class guys and they're different races. Everybody jokes about race. Now, PMC fucking woke motherfucker is going to come in there and say, oh, well, this is inappropriate. Motherfucker, we establish our own dynamic. We establish our own, the Mexicans and the black dudes and the white dudes, we all joke about race. And we all get along, we all fucking have love for each other. So don't fucking tell us how to fucking joke. Fuck you. We'll joke however the fuck we want to joke. And guess what? We'll all have stronger bonds because we can acknowledge our racial differences while also getting past them through a joke. This is Zizek's on point with this shit. He's like, man, this kind of joking, this banter actually creates bonds. It makes people get past whatever like racial differences they have by neutralizing it through humor. You fucking stick up your ass, motherfuckers, with your PhDs and your fucking PMC shit and your fucking sensitivity training. That ain't how motherfuckers establish meaningful relationships. So shut the fuck up and learn something from us for a change. That's how we feel. And the way they do it, it has these people who vote for Trump don't even like Trump. They're just using him to send a fucking message. It's not that they're diehard ride Trump's dick motherfuckers. They don't care. They're just saying, learn a fucking lesson. Listen to what the fuck we're about. You motherfuckers ain't representing shit. You think you represent everybody with your fucking identity politics, and I stand in for this community or I stand in for that community. You don't represent shit. Except all of us not having any goddamn thing. That's what you represent.
Exactly. By the way, Rebecca in the chat was like, I'm loving this, and then said, my coworker, had my anarchist brother try and use my transness to make me vote for Kamala. Was so annoying. And that's the thing, man. It's like, can you imagine? And see, I can't because I'm a white dude, so I haven't had anybody give a fuck about me my whole life. But I mean, not from institutions, right? Not doing this whole like, oh, by the way, of course we care about you. No, there's just none of that pretense. It's all bullshit. Everyone knows it's bullshit. But, you know, there's a special kind of person. They're mostly Disney adults. They think it's real. They actually feel seen. They actually feel spoken to. They get all excited when Kamala fucking like pats them on the head or whatever. And it's like, okay, great. But everybody else is like being told, oh, you have to love us because we represent you. But here's the question. Somebody brought it up in the chat. I want to hear it from everybody here. But basically, we'll start with Mikey because it's his rant. And the question goes like this.
More Jack Daniels rant at this point.
That's true. That's true. But they said, what do you guys think of the lesser of two evils argument? That's TBSN 87 in the chat. So like, yeah. What do you think of they're the lesser evil, so you have to do it.
All right. So one thing first, just like what Rebecca said, and then I think about this shit. Like, look, believe it or not, like, yeah, hetero cis white male. Well, sometimes I think about what it must be like to be a trans person going through this whole culture war. Sometimes I'll sit back and I'll be like, if I was trans, I'd be sitting there going, you motherfuckers sure like to use me as sign value, right? Like Baudrillard talks about sign value. Like you buy a certain commodity and that commodity says that you're a certain type. Oh, if you wear the Che Guevara t-shirt, it means you're a rebel, right? A certain kind of rebel. I see so many motherfuckers online use trans people as sign value. Like, oh, I have a trans friend, so I'm a good person. And then they always act like trans people are just reducible to being trans. Like that's the whole of their being. Man, the trans girl I worked with when I was a bouncer, I loved her. And you know what her favorite thing was? Being a video game player. And she was fucking good at it. And that's what she fucking loved to do. And her and I used to talk about the culture war back in the day. And she was just like, you know, and because she wasn't into like the online activism thing. She's just a person trying to live her fucking life. Right. And she's like, you know, everybody thinks because I'm a trans woman, like that's the main thing. Like my whole identity, my whole thing is just being. She's like, I like playing video games. Like that's my thing. Like I'm a video game historian. She knew every fucking thing about every fucking system. It was crazy, right? And I'm like, that's what I would. I mean, again, I'm the hetero cis white male. I just wish there was shit like that. Like, why is every depiction of a trans person has to be because they're a trans person? Show them being a fucking killer game historian. Show them being a fucking philosophical genius. Show them being a fucking architect. Like, I'm just saying, like, that's where I feel like it's identity politics and culture war shit, where like every depiction of a trans person has to be based on the fact they're trans, when trans people are so much more than just being trans. And I'm like, man,
well, I should hope so. I should hope so. I should hope so. But the ones that get put in front of us, that is the only thing they have going for them.
That's true of all the fucking, all of the identities on the fucking, the woke side of shit, whether it's 100%. Black, trans, whatever. It's always that.
Tim Waltz. Tim Waltz. Tim Waltz is them trying to do that with a white dude, you know?
And dude, and that's like every fucking minority, racial, doesn't matter, that I know, that's what they don't like about the Democrats. They don't, or and what they don't like about the woke shit is like, yeah, I get it. Like, yeah, there's slavery in this country and there's shit that black people, everybody knows this shit. But that's not, but what the Democrats do is this fucking, oh, but we're gonna do this shit where it's manipulative and we're gonna exploit it for our own benefit. And then, but it's all in the name of the compassion and good. And every people who are black, people who are trans, people who are gay, people wake up and they're like, we don't buy this shit. Because at the end of the day, what we all have in common, and this is where I'm with Todd McGowan, we all have a lack in common. And it doesn't matter about what our fucking identities are. It's a universal lack, which is we don't have enough money and we don't have enough time energy. That's our fucking lack. And I have that in common with trans people. I have that in common with black people. I have that in common with gay people. I have that in common with atheists. I have that in common with Christians. So if that's how I'm viewing it, all of you are my fucking brothers and sisters because we don't have a major thing in common. Our whole fucking lives are spent worrying about fucking money and not having any fucking time and energy to devote to the things that we love. Well, fuck that life. I mean, what? Some fucking pro-capitalist motherfucker? What makes you so special? You think you deserve time in? I'm a human fucking being. That's why. That's who the fuck I think I am. Oh, you think you're special? You deserve. You think you should just have money and handouts, and you think you should just have to work. Goddamn right. And I don't think anybody else should have to do the shit either. I'm not special. It's not like I deserve some fucking particular privilege over everybody else. No, everybody deserves more of that shit. And if the goal ain't getting everybody, and when I say everybody, I mean everybody. If it ain't about getting everybody more money, more time, energy, fuck out of my face with that bullshit. I'm done.
Yeah, I think the problem is when, in a sense, right, like anti-woke people become like woke in reverse, you know, where so like they're saying the opposite thing, but structurally they're doing the same thing. I mean, this is why like I have a good friend who is like a brilliant, you know, Catholic theologian, and people keep wanting to be, oh, like we want you to speak out on the gender issues, and she's like, I don't want to do it because then I'm going to be that you know woman who's the spokesman for like why you know there's men and there's women, you know, and then I'm just stuck in this. Like, I just want to be me and do things that interest me, not get caught in this even one of these stupid talking heads who's like, you know, that's you know.
Oh, and see, that's why I go out of my way. I don't want to even use. I'm drunk, so I say fuck it. I'll use the word. But my whole thing is like, any of these terms are like fucking tractor beams. Like if you say woke in a in a negative way, it puts you on the right. Well, I ain't a fucking rightist. Like and so I don't like that shit either. And so I get the thing. Like I never want to just come off. Oh, I'm gonna build my whole brand on being anti woke. That shit's whack. Like I don't like that. Like, but I feel, to use a term of theirs, I feel gaslit when they're like, yeah, but it doesn't exist and it's just a right wing boogeyman. Mark Fisher knew this shit existed. Like we all know it exists. And then somehow, like, we're gaslit when they say, oh, no, it doesn't exist. Man, what the fuck are you talking about? Of course it exists. The point is, I don't want my jouissance to get locked into some anti-woke shit. But I don't want to be for it either. And so that's my issue with the culture war. Like, I've been on Twitter lately because I follow Nick Land because I like that motherfucker. Even though I disagree with him on politics and all that shit, like I have an interest in what Nick's up to. But his boys, his NRX boys, yeah, it's the same shit. Like they react as triggered and get worked up over somebody just saying something that's remotely anti-racist. They're like, oh no, race is real. I can prove it. It's metaphysically real. And it's like, that's what I hate on both sides of this thing. And the vast majority, and I ain't representing anybody, but I know the vast majority of the post-class fractured mass is over this shit on both sides. And anybody who keeps doubling down on the MAGA shit at its worst and the woke shit at its worst, you motherfuckers are going to lose as we move along. That shit had its time, 2016, and we're still living in 2016 in a way. But as we move forward, it's like motherfuckers have to get past these fucking tropes, this fucking NPC fucking script that these motherfuckers do on both sides. And so, like at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to think through: is how do we get past this bullshit and find a way forward that, you know, can get past the fucking pitting people against each other bullshit. Like, we're the universalists. Like, motherfuckers might not think that, but we're the ones who are over here like, no, human beings at the end of the day, all of them need more money, more time, energy. And that's the core basis, is an improvement in economic conditions, which involves more money, or a restructuring of how people get money, and time, energy. So, but it is like, I don't want to get caught in, I don't want to just be a fucking anti-woke bot, and I don't want to be an anti-neo-reactionary bot either. Like, but at the same time, I want to oppose both. So that's the situation I find myself in.
And as you said, like
I'm done.
I mean, you made a point there with the Zizek thing and the safe space thing. The way it should be, like, a safe space shouldn't be where you're walking on eggshells. It's where you can literally say anything and it's okay. And you're not also just trying to provoke people, but you just honestly, isn't that what it maybe once meant or could mean? Like, why don't we just reclaim that as, like,
think about it, right? Why do I love that point, right? Why do I feel more in a safe space with working class guys of different races who don't have any knowledge of theory, don't have any philosophy knowledge, just working class guys, Mexicans, Koreans, black guys? We can all sit around and talk about race in an honest, good-hearted way that I don't think you can in any space on a college campus. So if that tells you something, it's like, what, I got to go work in a warehouse to be able to talk about race honestly with everybody hearing each other out and not attacking each other? That tells you that something's fucked in the university if you got to go to a warehouse to be able to do that shit. All right, like, I'm muting. I'm. You guys take it away.
No, you're not getting off the hot seat anytime soon.
Hate the Jack Daniels. I got to get another Jack Coke.
No, you don't. But go for it, Benjamin.
Yeah, on the harm reduction point, the question began with harm reduction. The harm reduction argument is undialectical and is only used by people who don't really like to think. Because, of course, the two parties in a two-party system cause each other, right? The Republicans react to the Democrats and develop in a way which is shaped by what the Democrats do. And the Democrats react to the Republicans and develop in a way that's shaped by what the Republicans do. So to vote for the Democrats is also to vote for the kind of Republicans who will be generated by those Democrats. When you're making a decision about Democrats, you are also making a decision about the kinds of Republicans that will come into existence as a consequence of that. So for people to suggest that you have to vote for the Democrats, well, unless you think that you're going to establish a one-party state and abolish the two-party system and make the country authoritarian, eventually you will get the Republicans that are generated by the Democrats that you're voting for. You are not going to win every election for all eternity in a two-party system. So sooner or later, you're going to get the Republicans. Will the Democrat that you're voting for cause those Republicans to be better or worse? If the Democrat that you're voting for will make the Republicans worse than the Republicans are now, you might be better off picking the Republican that's available immediately from the point of view of harm reduction, because the one you'll get in 4 years or 8 years will be worse, will be made worse by the Democrat that you would have picked. I made this argument in 2020 on the Current Affairs podcast with Nathan Robinson. We debated this issue, and I made this point. It's something that I think people really failed to grasp. If Trump had won in 2020, he would be term limited. He'd be finished. January 6th never would have happened. None of this talk about democracy would be going on. You would have reached a point where already he was done and over with, and you'd be having an election in response to 2 terms of that. And it would be much more wide open because you'd have a Democratic primary that would be based on, Trump is done now, it's all over with. What next? And maybe that would have also been terrible. Maybe it would have been just as bad. But I think a lot of these people, when they were voting for Biden, they never imagined that Biden would give them more Trump. But of course, that's what he did. Of course. And Harris would have been even worse. Harris would have generated worse kinds of Republicans than Biden, for sure. So this is why the harm reduction argument is just not relevant at all. You're not making choices between two things that exist on their own, that have essences that are distinctive, that have their own causal mechanisms or come out of their own separate universes, and you pick one universe or the other universe. They're constantly in dialogue and in dialectic with each other. And that's why the harm reduction argument has always been incredibly stupid. And yet it's made by a lot of people who would like us to think of them as smart.
Like Nathan Robinson is he's the current affairs guy, right?
Well, I think he's learned something from the experience. I hope so. I hope everybody has. A lot of people made this argument. A lot of people who have very advanced degrees and fancy themselves people who can think made harm reduction arguments. Noam Chomsky made harm reduction arguments. A lot of people that people like and respect indulged in this kind of stupid stuff. It was stupid. That kind of argument is very dumb. But yet it was very widely made. It's in part because our whole culture is becoming stupider to the point where even the people who are put in front of you as the smart thinking people are not able to tarry with much. And it's because people are getting stressed out. It's because the professions are becoming more precarious and it's getting harder for people. And they're constantly getting bombarded with all this stressful messaging from the media. It causes people to wig out and to not think. People who are capable of it. You know, Nathan Robinson, he's capable of it. But if you're subjected to this and you get yourself into a doom loop, then you start talking yourself into undialectical one-sided claptrap. And it's not any different from blaming groups of people for the situation. It's one-sided in the same way that blaming racial groups, religious groups, sexes, genders, sexualities, it's the same kind of thinking, which is to not think about the whole thing together and to try to look for some part of it that you can isolate as the bad part and then reject to protect the system from it. But it is always already part of the system, so you can't simply reject it. You can't just reject the Republicans or reject the Democrats. They're both part of the thing.
Well, I guess I just want to say, like, you know, this is one of the great things about you, Benjamin, is you never assume the worst. But I just always want to say also, like, for the Nathan Robinsons of the world, for the Sam Cedars, for anybody who's going to play this game, for the David Pacmans, this lesser of evil, it's a lesser evil, you got to do it. There's, outside of their conscious, rationalizing of the situation, outside of their conscious decision making, just in terms of the field that they inhabit, it is convenient and rewarded to hold that position. They are telling people, a certain demographic of people, something that they want to hear. Now, I realize, sorry, I'm cutting ahead of Sean here. Sean, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't want this to count as my hand-raising point either. I just wanted to interject quickly on Benjamin's point. My hand's up for later, but we've got a queue going now. Get in it. Mikey, I know we'll want to bring you back in a minute to talk about Deleuze, but Sean has been...
literally, like, this is just like a 20-second thing. I just want to say, because I got, I'm kind of faded, whatever. Look, as far as lesser evil, sometimes the only way you can make your point is by doing something that ultimately harms you in the long run. It's sacrificial. This is Baudrillard's point with symbolic exchange. By people choosing somebody that they know isn't going to be in their economic interest, it ain't because they're dumb. It's like, I'm willing to fucking sacrifice to prove a point to you motherfuckers. Wake the fuck up. And sometimes choosing the fucking more evil one has this symbolic exchange baked into it, which is, I'm willing to do this shit to send a message to you motherfuckers. Will you hear it? That's up.
Let's go ahead, Sean. I know I would love to respond to that point with Mikey, but I also don't want to derail. Sean, you've had your hand up for several minutes at this point. What you got for us?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, man.
Cool. No, I love that back and forth between I mean, what Benjamin was saying and what Dave was saying. That was awesome. Like the whole lesser of two evils thing. Like I never know really how to argue against it, but I just know in my gut that it's like bullshit. You know what I mean? So that's a great argument. But I just wanted to. This is for Mikey or anyone else. Is just like it seems to me like really obvious that like we know that the options available to us in general are like bullshit. And it seems like we need to do something to self organize in some way as like working class people. But it always seems like whenever you go and, like that doesn't seem to be something that seems possible for us to do. It just seems like it's not even like on the map. Like if you try and suggest it to people, it just seems like what are you even saying? You know, it's like, what do you mean we need to do it ourselves? Like the Democrats don't have it, the Republicans don't have it, the DSA doesn't have it. Um, and so it's like, what? There just seems no path forward at all. And so I'm wondering, like, does anyone have any thoughts on it? Whoever wants to take
Believe
that.
it or not, like this is where like I straight up take seriously what Zizek says, which is if you want something to happen, you got to move the underground. Like that's why he said, it's a theoretically precise title, right? To call ourselves Theory Underground. Like, I mean, when you think about, I mean, can you imagine like if you showed the early Christians what like Christianity became, what they would think of it? Like, man, like it started off as this little private like sect of people who followed Christ, and then it became the whole fucking world, right? Yeah, I'm gonna quote Prometheus: "Big things have small beginnings." So I think the key is what we're doing right now. Like the funny thing is, us sitting here having a conversation. This is the praxis. Like at least the virtual praxis, the praxis before the praxis. Yeah, that's a Jersey Shore reference. Uh, it is like I mean, we we got to attune ourselves to different ways of thinking in order to act on the basis of new ways of thinking. Like that's why I don't like pseudo active. Everybody's doing shit, but it doesn't do a goddamn thing because all the pseudo activity is just already inscribed into the fucking system. It's captured by the apparatus of capture. It ain't gonna change a goddamn thing. And so this is the Zizekian point. Like the time now is for theory. It is time for questioning. It is time for philosophy. It is time to rethink the situation. And to me, that's the foundation of some kind of praxis emerging in the future. None of us got the answer, but that's our advantage. It's Socratic. Our advantage is that we know we don't have the fucking answer. That's the position to start from. Everybody else got the fucking answer.
And of all the answers out there, that's the best one I've heard. So I'm going with it. You know what I mean? Like I don't hear anything better, and that sounds better than anything else out there. You know,
we're putting ideas down. We're making new thought connections, not for us because it's going to pay off. In the immediate, it's for future generations to give them a fucking shot to do something else.
I guess my only like concern is like I hope we can really fucking move from thought to action at some point, you know? Like I hope that we're all planning on that, you know? Like sometime. I don't know when, but you know.
But I try to think of it in terms, and Nance, I want your thoughts on this. But look, I view it.
Fucking speak for yourself. Fucking, I'm in action all day, every fucking day. Haven't stopped for fucking 10 years. Not a fucking minute without it. Not a minute. Yeah.
Hey, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Like
I'm gonna defend Sean here. Sean ain't saying that. Like that's not Sean's point.
No, I'm not saying. Yeah, I'm not saying you're sitting on your ass.
I know, guys.
No, look. Here's what we're waiting on. We're trying to cultivate the situation in which an event can happen. We're trying, all of us. Everybody's trying to reshape the presuppositional background. Maybe I sound like a Heideggerian. Fuck it, I was a Heideggerian. We're trying to reconfigure what we think is even possible in order to act in a new direction. Like, no, a society where people have time, energy, and they don't have to worry about money? Actually, that is fucking possible. Nobody around us thinks this shit we're talking about is possible. We have to make the case to them this shit could happen. How do we make the case? Well, we refine our arguments. We don't just say, Object petite, oh, body without organs, third order simulacra. We don't just say this shit. That don't do anything. You have to convince motherfuckers that things that they think are impossible are actually possible. And you do that through
Yeah.
clear, understandable reasoning. This is basic philosophy. Fuck theory. Throw it out the fucking window if it keeps you from being able to talk to people in a way that comes off to them as intelligible and rational.
Yeah.
And you convince them, look, we're making new breakthroughs with technology every day. AI can be used for good, it can be used for bad. You make these cases where it's like, no, there is a new future out there where we don't have to work nearly as much and we can have material needs satisfied. This shit is possible. Question is, are we going to fight for that? Or are we going to end up in some shit that's even worse than what we got now?
I like it. The last thing I have to say, and then I'll shut up, is we need to make 1 million Socrates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on some level, yeah. Fucking change the background, cultivate the background. It's like Voltaire at the end of Candide, cultivate the garden. That's what the fuck we're trying to do, is cultivate a new garden.
I guess I have my hand up. I guess I have my hand up here, so I'll say something. I think I was
fucking
gonna
hand down. Nobody wants to hear from you right now.
Yeah, that's right. So much yapping on the internet. We don't need more of it. I'll just
so
go.
can I direct
I'll
this
just
shit?
go
Hold on.
out.
Hey, this is my drunk stream, so I get to direct this motherfucker.
This is
All right,
Mikey's
so
drunk
next up-
stream.
Look, a minute ago,
So
I was
next up,
I was
Change
pretty
the
hard on
title
her-
to that.
Yeah. Mikey's
it
joke.
already is. It already is. Yeah. No, actually, what it says is Democrats lose the culture war and Rightoids big mad at Deleuze.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so a minute ago, I was kind of hard. Like I'm feeling like Cornel West right now. I want to talk about my woke brothers and sisters, right?
Come
Like,
on, brother.
So all of y'all, like, look, even if you weren't canceling me or giving me shit for something I said, look, at the end of the day, I want you motherfuckers to have better lives too. I want the MAGA motherfuckers to have better lives. I want the tanky motherfuckers to have better lives. I want them all, Christians, atheists. I want all you motherfuckers to have better lives. So if you don't like some shit I said, then fuck you, because I want what's best for you to the best of my ability. So my heart's in the right spot. What I will say is I went kind of hard on the woke side. Now I want to give the neo-reactionaries a little bit of shit because hey, Rebecca, hey, so the other day I posted a Deleuze and Guattari post on Twitter, and these land bros, neo-reactionaries, lost their motherfucking minds over just an anti-racism statement. Dave, you want to read this shit?
Nance is our Audible certified.
Please, Nance, do us the
author.
honors.
Is it in the chat? Did you
this.
share it in the chat?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
in
it's
here.
in Messenger.
I can share it in the.
I got it.
Look how
Oh,
many
actually,
views it
you
got.
should share it in the YouTube chat so everybody can see it. But yeah, from the viewpoint of racism, there is no exterior. There are no people on the outside. There are only people who should be like us and whose crime it is not to be. The dividing line is not between inside and outside, but rather is internal to simultaneous signifying chains and successive subjective choices. Racism never detects the particles of the other. It propagates waves of sameness until those who resist identification have been wiped out, or those who only allow themselves at a given degree of divergence. Its cruelty is equaled only by its incompetence and naivety.
So, okay. So I posted that because on Twitter, like recently, I just kind of post philosophy quotes, see what people, how they respond. I already knew, like, all right, man. And I was hoping to get Land himself responded to that fucking quote. I was like, I'm fishing. Like, I'm baiting the motherfucker. I'm going to get you to
What'd
say
he
something,
say?
Nick. Here, let me read some of these responses. These motherfuckers, you bring up anything anti-racist, and these dudes lose their motherfucking collective minds over this shit. It's hilarious. Hold on. Let me find it. Hold up. I should have had it pulled up.
I wish I
didn't.
could have. I wish I could have just shown it on stream, but I'm gonna fucking step outside and hang out with you guys from my phone for a minute.
Hold on.
How about?
Well,
By the
look-
way, welcome to the Zoom call, Rebecca. Good to have you.
We're,
Yeah,
hold on, I
nice
want
to
to
be
get
here.
Nick's.
Yeah, did
Yeah,
you?
what's up? Hold on, let me get Nick's actual response because it's funny coming from me. Oh, and then Swole got on there and just started trolling the fuck out of these guys and had me diet because Swole don't give a fuck. I'm like, man, you want to start some shit on Twitter? Just get Swole to chime in. Oh, okay, hold on. Yeah, so all right. So Nick actually reposted my post, right? And Nick said, standard schizo, anyone recognizing differences is just imposing sameness on everyone. Cope from Deleuze. So you see a neo-reactionary land breaking with his Deleuze-Guattarian former self, right? And then he says, oh, then I said, not gonna lie, I posted this with the hope of getting your response to it. Would you say that this is an instance of you being more Deleuzian, faithful to difference, than Deleuze himself? And he said, yeah, Benjamin, listen to this. He says, the Anglo-Protestant Whig tradition is more differentiating, both theoretically, discriminating, and practically, schismatic, than postmodern French neo-Marxism, certainly. Not sure if I care if that's Deleuzian. Crucial authority for primordial multiplicity is the numogram. Like, I mean, you don't get more Landian response than that shit. But no, like, okay, so whatever. You know, land, like I love that motherfucker, even though I hate like the fucking political shit. Like, land's land. All right, like maybe it's somehow he gets a pass. It's like, all right, Nick, yeah, whatever. But his boys, let's see.
You don't respect them.
Well, they didn't write Meltdown, did they? They didn't come. I mean, look, I said it before, I'll say it again. I think when that motherfucker was at his best, he was a hell of a fucking theorist. Like, I mean, early land, the shit that I read in Thirst for Annihilation. I mean, when you get into the details of that book, that motherfucker was on some shit. So I respect that dude. I respect the motherfucker who wrote those key essays in Fang Numenon. I respect the guy who wrote, CCRU. Right. I have a respect for this dude, and I'm never gonna fucking uh deny that. Like I do love the dude as a thinker. I mean, now is he still a thinker like I don't think he even pretends to be. I mean, he's a fucking Trump bro and a fucking does this thing with the numogram which you won't tell anybody about. And so I mean that's kind of what we have. And so like with him, it's like, yeah, dude, when you were writing Meat, when you were writing Cyber Gothic, when you were writing Meltdown, when you were, man, them essays are, I'm not bullshitting, those are fucking killer essays. Like, there's a reason why Fisher was like, this dude was our Nietzsche. Like, that motherfucker was awesome at philosophy. And it's easy to just brush him under the rug. And that's just what you see me not do. Like, I have nothing but respect for what that guy did theoretically, philosophically. I love that shit. Even I'm not saying I agree with all of it. I mean, you can love, you don't have to agree with a philosopher on every fucking point to love what they're doing, right? I don't agree with anybody on every fucking thing. So there's that. But I mean, the stuff with, look, I get why he has complaints with the left because I have complaints with the left. Do I think him and his boys have gone in the other direction where they become pathological about certain shit? Yeah, it's like, don't act like all the pathology is just on the woke left. Like they monopolize it. You motherfuckers have plenty for yourselves where you can't think through shit without having them fucking meltdown. Funny enough, right? So look, so here's some of the shit. So somebody said in response to the D&G quote, okay, but why did they have to steal my bike? I'm like, is that what you're saying? Some black dude stole your bike or something, like some foreigner stole your bike. So take that, D&G. Yeah, that really stands up in Tribunal Zero. Wow, fucking profound. If Kamala had won, this is what police officers would have read out to you if you reported a stolen bicycle. Wow. Deep shit, bro. Man, you motherfuckers are philosophical geniuses over here. Uh, can racism exist if it doesn't detect the particles of another? Racism is noticing the radical difference between races. Sameness, that's an accusation to be leveled at the anti-racist, the humanist, that says we're all equal. Racists don't believe in in-group equality. Then the racism understander has arrived. Mike, am I the racism understander or DNG? I don't know, but whatever. Uh, the complete opposite of the truth, just smuh. Oh, damn. Just the philosophical wizardry is on display. Everybody take fucking notes. They are fucking cooking over there on the right. God damn. Uh, Therefore, you should celebrate black homeless schizophrenics masturbating on public transportation. Oh, yeah, that's what follows from that quote. Yeah. Man, get your fucking asses the fuck out of here. Like, and they talk from this position like, we're the enlightened ones who don't fall for race ideology. Like, man, you motherfuckers don't give any arguments. And what you make your appeals to what? DNA. There's DNA and DNA. And IQ. My IQ is better than yours. I'm better than you. Like that's what. And so motherfuckers have challenged this shit. You can look at like Stephen Jay Gould. You can look at Adolph Reed in class notes. I mean, Benjamin knows this fucking race essentialism, race realism. Like I've heard Benjamin just spit bars on how dumb this shit, right? But the point is they don't come at it from an argument based thing. It's just, oh, you think we should talk about racial equality. You dumb. Like motherfucker. Okay. So first off, in my land book, I do make a fucking argument for onto equality. That's what I call it. I believe that there's basic ontological structures that all of us have in common, despite our ethnicity, race, gender, religion. None of that shit is getting at the core of our ontological makeup. And I try my best, and I can do a better version of it, especially through Tribunal Zero. But I think if you look at Kant, all of us, I don't care if we're tribal society or fucking classical society or modern, we all think in terms of causality. We think in terms of substance and attribute. We think in terms of fucking unity and multiplicity. Like all these basic Kantian categories about how we organize experience. All of us are doing this shit. If you go to Heidegger, yeah, Mr. fucking fascist over there. Guess what? Early on in Being in Time, Division 1, when he's laying out the basic structures of what it is to be Dasein, you want to say what it is to be human? Guess what? All of us. You're not going to show me somebody in a tribal society tucked away in the Amazon who doesn't have being with, who doesn't have the other as part of who they are in the tribe, right? These basic structures that make up our existence, they're transcultural, they're transhistorical, and I think when you get into a serious ontology of the subject, all of this race essentialism shit just breaks the fuck down. And what you have is people trying to ontologize particular differences. Okay, so what? The white guys want to use the IQ fucking shit because it makes them feel our culture is superior. When you break the news to them that if you want to play the IQ game, it seems like the Asians are winning it. They don't seem to like that so much. And all this kind of, oh, but IQ is the metric by which you judge everything about a human. Shut the fuck up. Like, if there's so many presuppositions that they just go with and then act like they're speaking from the objective truth, it's just laughable. Benjamin, I would love to know what you think about people who want to ontologize and essentialize racial difference.
Well, of course, you have to start with anybody who thinks that test taking is a measure of human capability hasn't read their Wang Yang Ming. Because after all, it's the Confucian Chinese tradition in which the critique of the examination system was made most poignantly and sharply, right? Because in China you had to be good at taking the exams to be able to get a good administrative job. It followed from there that in China, very rigorous critiques of exams were developed by sharp people who could see that being good at taking the test did not actually make people good administrators, even though according to the test scores, they should have been. So on the IQ point. But more generally, I think a lot of people on the right have gotten so accustomed to never thinking with the concept of equality that they just take it for granted that anytime it's being invoked, it's being applied to everything, and not just, say, racial differences, but all human variation, to the point where they suggest that people who include the concept of equality in their schema must be claiming things that are obviously ridiculous. And the thing is, people don't generally make claims that are obviously ridiculous. Most people, especially, the sharp canon thinkers who work with the term equality, are using it to say specific things. And it's interesting to talk about if you dig into what specifically they're saying. Like Hobbes, right? Hobbes is someone who's often thought of as a right-wing guy. But Hobbes is also the theorist who perhaps has the largest role in bringing about the popularization of the concept of equality. Outside of maybe, Fenelon or Rousseau, but they come later, right? Hobbes doesn't argue that we're all equal in every respect. He just argues that we are all reasonable enough to be able to seek peace. We can all recognize certain things, certain minimum things. We all pose some level of threat to each other. We all are capable of hurting each other, and we're all capable of recognizing that. And then we're all capable of going, maybe we should come together in some way to deal with that problem. And in fact, it's a relatively optimistic view about what people are capable of, being able to recognize that and do something about it. But what we're really talking about here is what are the capabilities that people have? And then if some people have different capabilities than others, how do we organize into, say, groups or classes or what have you, different levels of capacity? And how does a person move, if a person can move, from one group to another? These people think that you can just break it down into races and use skin color as an easy heuristic and just sort people on that basis, and then have sharp, impenetrable walls between the different groups on that basis. That's ridiculous. We all know that, for instance, children tend to gain in capacity over time, and then they become adults who are more capable than children, right? So people can move in terms of their level of capacity within one lifetime, right? We all know people from every different ethnic, racial, language, religious background. If you've paid any attention to any human tradition, you can find people who are really sharp, interesting, and bright in that tradition. So none of these things are hard impediments to becoming highly conscious or able to think. If you study Islam, if you study Confucianism, if you study any of these traditions, you will find very sharp, wise, interesting people, right? So then the question is, instead of which group are you in so that we can put you in a box that you can never get out of, that will always define and limit you, how do we move a person as far as they can go? And there may be some, and indeed I'm sure there is some, variety in terms of natural talent, right? But that's a variety which occurs across every kind of heuristic, easy, simple dividing line that you could erect, right? We can find within Islam, within Christianity, within Platonism, within Marxism, within every continent and every language group, some people who are more talented than others. And they try to think, oh, you could turn this into a distribution and make statistics out of it. Well, the only way you can even begin to try to do something like that is to try to decide what human capabilities are on the basis of examinations, which is already so far estranged from the real context in which people actually use their skills that it can only be a very blunt instrument. And sometimes we're in situations where we have to use blunt instruments, but we should never reify them and think that that actually means that they do actually track the things that they're designed to track. Yeah, something like IQ might be more useful than picking people out of a hat if you're trying to, hire people to do bureaucratic jobs. But that doesn't make it an actual measure of the talent potential of different population groups, especially when you consider that all of these different groups have different institutions which structure them at stages before they even enter into the education system, all the way down to the level of family structure and the way in which they're raised by their parents and how their parents treat them. If you were to actually treat class as rigidly as people treat race, and you made sure that on every census people recorded the class background of their parents in detail, people would think that these classes were natural and that they had a biological component, because the way that your family system works and the way that your parents interact with you has an enormous amount of influence on your potential and how you're eventually able to do. If you always measure race and you always include it on every census and survey, and whenever you do any kind of demographic breakdown of people, you always categorize them by skin color as part of the statistics, this will, of course, create an impression that this is relevant. What you measure is what you tend to find. Why is it that we operate from the premise that somebody's skin color is relevant for determining what their skill level is in the first place? Why are we doing that? We're doing that because it's a stupid heuristic that people used when they naturalized a particular historical situation, which was the spread of the European colonial empires all over the world, right? A lot of people who did not understand why it was the case that the Europeans could colonize the entire planet and who hadn't thought about it very much, maybe it has something to do with skin color. It seems like the poorest parts of the world are the parts where people have the darkest skin, and the richest and most powerful parts of the world are where people have the lightest skin. So maybe that's the cause, they said. It's because they weren't able to produce a rigorous historical account of how the European colonial empires formed, that they indulged in that kind of lazy heuristic. And if you're someone who doesn't do this professionally and you're just trying to come up with an excuse or an explanation for why things are the way they are, and you're drinking beers with your buddies, I can understand how you would look at what's around and draw correlates and imply causes. But if you're someone who does this seriously, if you're a theorist, you can't possibly be satisfied with something so intellectually lazy and stupid as that, can you? It's astounding that people fancy themselves theorists, and yet they're so lazy that they don't even think under the hood of that. Really? You spend years and years writing and talking and reading, and you never think about, are these things perhaps a consequence of the way in which power in the world was distributed in the 14, 15, 1600s? You really think that it's because the Europeans were genetically smarter that all of that happened? How do you explain the periods in history where it wasn't like that and other people in other parts of the world were stronger? Why is it that it was the Southern Mediterranean people who initially ran the show in Europe, and then the Germans and the Britons and the Celts were ridiculed and made fun of for being stupid? The assumption was that by the way, for the Romans, was that it was because they came from a cold climate, that the cold slows your brain, but it forces you to become very burly because you have to work hard to be able to feed yourself. So on that basis, the Romans thought, well, that's why the Germans and the Britons and the Celts are physically robust, but a little bit uncultured. But if you were to take one of them and move them to the south, the Romans believed that the climate, the air, would have a positive effect on them and awaken these capacities. I mean, at least that leaves room for the possibility of, if you change somebody's situation, you might reveal that they have potential. Conversely, they made an argument about Egypt and the Middle East, that these climates were too hot and that this encouraged people to come up with clever ways of avoiding doing work. And so it led to physically weak people who were intellectually robust. Their argument for why the Romans were able to colonize, and dominate the world was that they came from the moderate climate, which produced the right mix of these traits. Now, that's obviously a lazy heuristic explanation for why the Roman state is the powerful state. Why is Rome in Italy and not in Gaul and not in Egypt? If you're a Roman and you're sitting around drinking wine with your Roman buddies, you have to come up with an explanation, don't you? And that might be a plausible explanation for somebody who hasn't thought about it very much. But if you're a philosopher, you can't possibly be satisfied with that. The same thing goes on now. It's just people have no sense for history when they talk about this, and they easily could. I mean, all of this stuff is sitting around. I don't blame people who don't have any time, energy, and are just thinking about this with their buddies. But these people who do theory, who talk this way,
No,
they're
you
not
blame
real
Nick.
theorists. They're
You
just
blame Nick
posers.
Land. You blame Nick Land and Curtis Yarvin.
Well, they certainly tolerate this kind of thing in their followers, and
Yeah.
because they tolerate it,
No,
the
they go for
followers
it, I
feel
think.
emboldened. Yeah, maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe they do. In the case of Yarvin, some of the stuff he threw out in the letter to the open-minded progressive, wild stuff. He was arguing, making Jacobite arguments for restoring the Stuarts.
Can you elaborate on that?
Would you ever talk to Yarvin Benjamin?
I mean, I would talk to anybody, especially if you guys want me to. I mean, would I want to? Would I be excited to? Would I like write somebody a letter and go, please talk to me? I mean, that's different, right? But if Dave says, hey, we have somebody who wants to talk to you, or we want you to talk to somebody we think it'll be good for people to have a contradiction conversation, that's different. Willing to talk to versus, wanting to.
Yeah.
There's an awesome cue that's formed in my mind for contradictions with Benjamin, but all in good time. I'm not trying to rush any of them. We've got lots of base building to do. And speaking of which, like, we've got people in the chat who think we're just straw manning these IQ people. Well, we can only go off of the people we've read or seen, and they're idiots. Or at least, here's the thing. And so the arguments made here decimate them. If there's people that these arguments don't decimate, then that's fantastic. Tell us about that. But don't act like this is straw manning when this is real people. We've been around.
This goes on all the time. They say that you're straw manning, but then if you ask them to produce an argument that's convincing, they just produce the same shit.
I'm with Benjamin 100% on this shit. I see these motherfuckers. They act like you haven't done you haven't read all the. Where's this shit? Nick himself makes reference. Oh, all the evidence. Produce the shit, because I don't know where this shit is at. If you motherfuckers reference, if there's shit that Benjamin and I and the rest of us don't know about, fine. Then I guess we got to fucking go to work and look at this shit. But until I see something, instead of just people making references to this shit, then I don't give a fuck, because it ain't my case to make.
We got people in the chat saying stuff like this who then say, they use the word empirical and they don't need this sociological mumbo jumbo. And it's like, yeah, that's right. You don't need Kant. Yeah, that's right. You don't need to think about psychology or socioanalysis or psychoanalysis. You don't need to think about that. You don't need to think about Hobbes or Plato or Marx. You don't need to think about that. You don't need to read these people. You just need a high IQ, and then you can do everything with empirical data. Yeah,
and a lot of them will doubt empirical methods if it's applied to some natural science issue that they don't like what the experts say. But as soon as it's something they want to believe, they'll just go, oh, it's science. It comes from empiricists.
Plus, look, crackers, the Asians beat us, so you don't win. Okay, so if you want to play that game, you fucking come in. You don't win, so you fucking loser. You're a fucking loser at the fucking IQ shit. So I don't know what you think you're using it for. So whatever. I mean,
I guess what I'm trying to say is that
the empiricists reify categories all the time in their studies. That's part of the theory critique of empirical social science, is that they reify the categories all the time, so they find what they're looking for, because they go into it assuming that the categories are relevant.
Yeah, and they don't know anything about habitus or field, and this, Benjamin, you were getting at it by talking about, like, there's point A and then there's point B where the tests are taking place, and there's all the stuff that the person has to do to get there, right? That's cut out. Oh, we're just going off of what we see. Well, what you see is not what took place to get the person under observation.
And they'll try to control for variables, but you cannot control for a lot of the variables that are to do with home life. It's very, very difficult to actually find out what happened in somebody's house.
Okay, so I don't know how accurate this shit is. I just did a Google search. Countries with highest IQ. Number 1, Japan. Number 2, Hungary. Number 3, Taiwan. Number 4, Italy. Number 5, South Korea. Number 6, Serbia. Number 7, Iran. Number 8, Finland. Number 9, Hong Kong. Number 10, Vietnam. Japan, number 1. They have the highest sit-down cracker.
I don't think it has much to do with
And
race
I don't
except for
even
the
saying
people
I'm
who are
buying
saying
this.
it.
I'm
Yeah.
not even saying I buy that shit. Don't fucking. I'm just saying, like,
These
you
aren't even
motherfuckers-
white people. These are just internet brained people. But Brian, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yes. And I have been thinking about Rome, so there you go. But Benjamin, you gave a pretty sympathetic reading of Hobbes there, but I'm interested because I've seen a lot of people, right, who would use the label post-liberal, right, who would say the problem is with liberalism is that it's founded on an ontology of violence rather than an ontology of peace, right, and they would kind of trace that to Hobbes usually, right? And sometimes they have a very big problem with the nation state as such, right? As and kind of that something crucial, right, is lost in that shift. And so they precisely would say that they don't want to commit to any politics where they're reproducing kind of their own Leviathan to displace the Leviathan that is the false piece of liberalism. I mean, how does that sound to you? Like the kind of, how would you begin to dialogue with such a person?
Well, a lot of the early critiques of Hobbes came from people we would recognize as liberal who made arguments quite similar to that. I'm thinking here about Hume, who argued that we are not all individuals in a war of all against all, but that we are people who tend to steal from people we don't know or take advantage of people we don't know to benefit our family and friends. And that part of the role of polities is to allow for forms of cooperation that go beyond that. Then you've got someone like Rousseau, who views natural man as very good-natured and very helpful and kind-hearted in many cases. So you've got a variety of different images in liberalism. I wouldn't say that all liberals are necessarily Hobbes people, right? And then also, in terms of non-liberal traditions, there's plenty of focus prior to liberalism on peace as something which is valuable and potentially only attainable through the state. I'm thinking of the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus, they're those Severans again, who claimed that he was establishing an all-embracing peace by defeating the barbarians who always harassed the empire, which is my favorite, like pat, Roman iteration of the peace narrative of the Romans, the role that the pax plays in Roman thought. All embracing peace, but you have to defeat the barbarians because they just don't accept the peace for some reason. Maybe it's because they haven't been exposed to it yet, so they don't understand how it will be good for them. Maybe. I would say that when it comes to peace, there are multiple different liberalisms, not just Hobbes's liberalism. So there are other iterations of liberalism that would contest that. And then outside of liberalism, in the non-liberal traditions, there's plenty of emphasis on peace and war coming from lots of different theorists, with kind of classical Republican roots.
And so I've always wondered, right, we probably all have the memory of learning this in school at some point, right? Why is it always like, man in the state of nature, they always begin with the individual. They don't begin with the community. Why is it imagined in that way? And obviously,
yeah, that's Hume's critique. Hume says social contract theory is bunk and liberalism shouldn't be based on that. And of course, the whole Scottish Enlightenment tradition comes, very much out of a lot of that. So yes, you can have critiques of that kind of individualism without necessarily exiting the liberal tradition. It's broader and more encompassing than that. But one of the tendencies that people have is to always reduce every tradition to a particular thing if it's a tradition that they're not part of and that they don't like, so that they don't have to engage with it. So if you say, well, all liberals just think about individuals abstracted away from society, and you use this to just kind of junk the liberal tradition, well, that ignores, German idealism, which comes out of Rousseau and Kant. And then it also ignores the Humean empiricism, right? It applies rather narrowly. And even someone like Hobbes doesn't literally mean that the state goes back to a state of nature of individuals abstracted away. Hobbes in Leviathan has this whole explanation of how sovereignty by acquisition works. And sovereignty by acquisition as opposed to by institution much more plausibly fits what tends to happen, which is that some army comes in and acquires you, and there's a process by which you agree to be acquired. And this process is that they threaten you with violence, and you have a free choice to be killed or to submit. And Hobbes says you are reasonable enough to recognize that your interest is in surviving, and therefore you will agree in this situation to submit. And for Hobbes, you can make a free agreement when coercion is involved. Coercion does not eliminate an agreement, right? An agreement can occur under conditions of coercion. Now, what I like about this is that it highlights something which many people still believe today, which is that you can enter an employment contract under the threat of starvation. Many people still think like that, basically. They just think that if it's commercial or economic coercion as opposed to military coercion, that it's different somehow. What I like about Hobbes is that this is a much more unvarnished view. Coercion has nothing to do with whether a contract is binding for him. In no way undermines it. Indeed, for Hobbes, the only thing which ultimately secures contracts is the possibility that they'll be enforced violently. So for him, violence and contract go hand in hand and cannot be divorced or talked about as separate or estranged things. But yes, there's other ways of thinking about this that are within what we would call liberalism that would be different.
And just loosely related to that, right? In many ways, Locke carries forward things that are already in Hobbes. There's one Canadian theorist, just to bring Canada into it somehow, the C.B. Macpherson, right? He criticized Locke's what he calls his possessive individualism, and I wonder if that you find that to be a valid, in a sense, like that. Self-ownership is not ultimately coherent, although it seems to be taken for granted very often, like when we talk about many issues of bodily autonomy or any number of other things. It's kind of assumed that is. How does it seem to you?
Yeah, so one of the things that Hobbes recommends is that we not insist that we understand what is good or what natural law is. And this is made very explicit in Behemoth, where he criticizes classical education for inviting people to make claims that are controversial that lead to conflict. And therefore, he argues that classical education should be abolished, which in some ways is what has been done. If you think about it, actually, our education now is much more like what Hobbes thinks we should get. And I think Hobbes can come in for lots of criticism here from people who are sympathetic to the value of that stuff. But again, it's clarifying that Hobbes says it, and it's valuable and useful to engage with it because it makes it clear. And then you can see this position and its effects. So in the case of Hobbes, the argument is if you start making claims about what you're entitled to by nature, and you don't allow the sovereign to adjudicate these claims, you're creating a situation where there will be conflicting claims, and this will eventually produce a condition of violence. And since you should prefer peace to whatever it is that you think you should get, because if you die, you don't get what you want to get anyway, then for that reason, you should not adopt positions on all these controversial questions and should instead, where possible, defer to the sovereign. And if you're so unfortunate as to happen to develop ideas about what you're entitled to, when you don't get what you're entitled to, you should recognize that as an inconvenience that's necessary for your survival. Hobbes uses the term inconvenient a lot. And it's a very powerful term because it gets across his attitude for how you should feel about cases in which you're wronged. You should recognize this as an inconvenience. This is still very much the default way in which many people in Britain think about inconveniences in their day-to-day lives. There is something very British about this idea that when you are in a situation where something wrong has happened, there's been a breakdown in something, you ought to just go, well, what can you do? And you stand in the queue and you wait. What's the alternative? The alternative is to break the law and to put yourself in danger and to be unreasonable in that sense. So Locke, in making all of these claims about what you're entitled to, introduces a much greater possibility for violence. So from a Hobbesian point of view, the problem with Locke is that he has failed to prioritize survival and peace and order, and has instead prioritized these property claims which conflict with the maintenance of such, right? And so in this sense, Locke is a regression back to the kinds of theories which existed before Hobbes, in which Protestant theorists and some renegade Catholic theorists made all kinds of claims about what they were entitled to by natural law. And this is not something Locke invented. This goes back way before Locke. Lots of different Christian theorists argued that they could use their reason to understand natural law, their God-given reason to understand natural law, and on the basis of their understanding, it entitled them to this. And because the sovereign is transgressing against that, they therefore have a right of rebellion. Aquinas in De Regno even talks about how this would hold if not for Christianity. In his view, because of the Christian transformation, it's no longer necessary to think about this in the way that the Greeks and the Romans thought about it, right? Their concept of tyranny as, a violation by the ruler of a natural law, and this goes back to Cicero, right? A natural law that can be violated by the tyrant and that therefore entitles you to rebel. This is something that Christianity has thankfully freed us from having to do, right? This argument that he makes in De Regno is highly controversial. If you don't accept the Thomistic move in Catholicism, to doctrinize Aquinas, it leaves you open for an enormous amount of potential argument and disagreement, right? Who's got the capacity to understand the natural law? Is it every person? Is it every ordinary Christian person, God-given? Or is this something which comes out of institutions and structures? Maybe you have reason, but only when it occurs within the context of a church community organized and reasoning together, which would be a moderate Catholic reply, right? Yes, you as a human being have God-given reason, but you have to be educated and trained in a community of knowers who are working together, right? And then this question of, well, can a community of knowers exist outside the church? Can the state have a community of knowers? Oh, now that's a potential issue. So there's all these arguments already going on in the Middle Ages when Locke shows up. Hobbes tries to end this shit with Behemoth. Hobbes says, stop thinking that you can know what you're entitled to by nature. All you know by nature is that you should do what's necessary to survive. That's all you know. Anything beyond that, you cannot be sure about. And there's going to be disagreement about all these controversies. Look at the last 300 years in Europe. Have there not been just endless controversies about these questions? Taking positions on these questions, have they not just gotten an enormous number of people killed? What good has it done anybody for people to have positions on these questions? In the context in which Hobbes is asking that question, it's a very reasonable thing to ask. It's not as if in the 17th century, people have been delivered from unpleasant circumstances by these kinds of arguments, right? But you come along to someone like Rousseau, and for Rousseau, there's a dialectic between society and the state, and these contradictions which produce violent, ruptures or produce instances in which a legislator has to come and re-give the form. This is for him the generative dynamic, right? And that leads into the Hegelian dialectic and so on. But for someone like Hobbes, this is dangerous shit which will not make anything better ultimately. And there is still a very significant contingent of often British empiricists who have something like that kind of view, or if not that kind of view, something like a Humean view, which is skeptical about our ability to understand all of these big questions, and therefore skeptical about our ability to insist that we know what we're entitled to.
What I see a lot, like people keep pushing back the date of modernity to where, like, if I were to ask you, would you say, like, is there some sense in which at a certain point the medievals are already modern?
I would say that the sharp distinction between antiquity and modernity is itself something modernity created to legitimate itself as a break, right? The 18th century theorists and 19th century theorists were arguing that the changes that they were making were necessary because there had been this fundamental shift, right? So it should be understood as a political distinction, a distinction which has a function, which is to legitimate a move from an older way of doing things to a newer way of doing things. And to say that older way of doing things was good and fine for those conditions, but now there are different conditions which have produced a different kind of person who therefore needs a different kind of structure. In fact, will not be satisfied by the old structure, but will endlessly rebel and cause trouble under that old structure. So that's a political move which is made by modernity in part to advance a particular conception. So what I would do is I would, question the distinction in general, and say, well, of course, we don't have precisely the same situation that they had in ancient Greece or ancient Rome or in the Middle Ages. There are all sorts of differences, but that kind of very hard binary line between two worlds, and you cross from one into the other, right? And it's produced this fascination with how did you cross, right? Well, it's something that happened gradually and in a piecemeal way. And also, there's still a lot that we have in common with them. It's not as if we have jumped over some kind of gulf into a completely different universe where the rules are totally different. What we have grew out of that and is in dialogue with that. And in some ways, if 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, if there are still people around, will they not think of us as perfectly continuous with Plato? Will they not think of us as basically the same? Very plausibly they might. These distinctions have a function. So I would draw your attention to the function that they play, and I'd keep it in your mind. I'd be aware of the way in which the distinction has been drawn. Particularly Benjamin Constant's version of it is very easy to get to grips with. The essay on the distinction between the liberty of the ancients and the liberty of the moderns. Very relatively short, relatively easy way to get across how the distinction was used. But I wouldn't take it too seriously. I wouldn't reify it. I would keep it in mind, and I would play with it a little bit.
Sean, you've had your hand up for at least 40 minutes. I'm just joking, but we're about to start winding down. We could be here for anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes, but we are going to start winding down.
I got something I got to say before we go, but I want
Before Sean,
I'm going to let you finish.
This is Mikey's drunk stream, so he can go whenever he wants. But yeah, Sean, go.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Benjamin Studebaker, since you said that IQ might be a little bit better than just pulling people out of a hat. I wondered what you think about like Athenian sortition, because that is pulling people out of a hat. And then the other thing I wanted to ask is, speaking of Hobbes, what do you think about the idea of the sovereign being the demos? If that makes sense.
Yeah, so I was talking there about for certain kinds of jobs.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
For certain kinds of jobs, not necessarily, for deciding on what's good. I don't think IQ has anything to do with knowledge of the good or wisdom. Nothing at all. Having seen what the Mensa people do, I am not at all convinced IQ has anything to do with knowledge of the good or wisdom. It might have something to do with shape rotating. And if you have a bureaucratic job that requires shape rotating, you might want some high IQ people, maybe, possibly. If you go through an IQ test, a lot of the questions have a lot to do with shape rotating. Right?
Yeah.
I don't think shape rotating has to do with a whole lot of the stuff that I tend to be concerned with, but it certainly has to do with certain tasks that people have in society, certain kinds of jobs and roles. The idea that the people can be sovereign, popular sovereignty, goes back to Marsilius of Padua, at least, right? That's a very old idea in political theory, and I could spend a lot of time talking about that. But it has a lot to do with, in Marsilius's conception, epistemology. It has to do with how knowledge is produced and generated. A lot of these ideas, if you go all the way back, a lot of this comes back to these thoughts about who has knowledge and how do you get it, right? Is knowledge something that we all can get, or only some of us? And however you answer that question, there's then a further question of, is this something you just do on your own in isolation, or do you do it in some sort of social setting or political setting? And overwhelmingly, the answer that almost everyone's going to give you in the history of thought is that it requires some level of sociality or political relationality, right? So then there's a question of who has not just the right level of talent or the right level of tutelage, but who is in the right set of relations, right? Who is in the right kind of social setting or political setting to participate in knowledge production or to have or to possess knowledge, right? So becomes a major, major question of who has a community. So Marsilius says if you have a community of knowers, then that is where you could potentially ground popular sovereignty. but you need a community of knowers that has some level of historicity, that's able to share things across generations, across time. So it's not just that people by their very nature have, say, popular sovereignty. He's not positing peoples as having an existence ontologically or essentially. No, he's saying that certain kinds of communities, by virtue of their being structured in a particular way, are able to have knowledge in a way that isn't possible outside that setting, and that knowledge is greater than that which can be had by an individual wise person who's not embedded in that kind of sociality, right? You see sometimes in contemporary political theory arguments from epistemic Democrats like Helene Landmore that gesture in this direction. But really, I mean, Marsilius makes this argument in the 14th century, hundreds of years before Locke. And it's a really interesting argument. And at some point, I'd love to talk more about it. But, it might be something that we do on a course.
I'm very down for that.
And
Thanks,
I think
Benjamin.
you have, Benjamin, you've got an episode on it up on Political Theory 101, right?
Yes, there is a Political Theory 101 episode on Marsilius of Padua. We do a lot of obscure theorists on Political Theory 101.
Oh, cool. I'll get to that eventually then. I've been listening to that.
Yeah. Though Marsilius should not be obscure. He should be better known than Locke, in my opinion.
Yeah, Sean, we're all excited to read and discuss your piece with you for the first session of The Turn. Soon, coming up. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Hell yeah.
Mikey?
Yeah, I'm here, and I'm kind of pissed. All right,
What
this
do
whole
you-
thing about me straw manning motherfuckers. Okay, let me tell you what. First of all, I know the motherfuckers in the chat don't know shit about Tribunal Zero. Stick around, you motherfuckers are gonna learn something. Not about Tribunal Zero. You gotta come back for that. But I will say this idea of straw manning. Okay, let me tell you something. Your whole thing with IQ. All right, motherfuckers. IQ is not ontology. And get your fucking pens out and take some fucking notes. Okay? Let me explain something to you, motherfuckers. A person's IQ, if we want to play this game, is some particular feature about them. Okay? It's like trying to say how long their fucking fingernails grow or how tall they are. It's some particular shit. Okay? Does it go to the core of their fucking being? No. Now, you can say, well, I don't know what it means to go to the core of the being. That's your fucking problem. Go read Heidegger. Yeah, I'm in that fucking mode. I don't give a fuck. Go read Heidegger, bitch. All right? Now, you need to understand the ontological difference. What's the ontological difference? There's a difference between one's essential being, one's basic mode of presencing, and particular features about you in your presencing. That might be a hard difference to understand. Not my fucking problem right now. I'm drunk. Go do the fucking work yourself. Read Heidegger, bitch. All right, now, ontological difference. Okay? Point is, and I'm kind of joking, but I'm giving you shit because you're saying I'm straw manning your shit, and I'm not. Now, you can say, oh, you're straw manning it because you don't understand the robust empirical data we have. Yeah. Well, what about my transcendental data, motherfuckers? Okay? Look, there's basic transcendental ontological structures that all of us human beings have in common. You or Nick Land might just hand wave them away by calling them sameness, but that makes you a fucking dipshit. So maybe you need to understand that sameness or universality is actually part of what makes up the fabric of our being. All of us have aspects of ourselves that are universal, that we share with all other human beings. We have particular shit about us that we have in common with some other human beings while not having in common with others. And then we have singular dimensions of ourselves, things that just make us the singular beings that we are, that we don't share with anybody else. That's our idiosyncratic spark of hexiety, to use the fucking medieval term on you motherfuckers. Okay? We are beings that have to navigate having universal dimensions, particular dimensions, and singular dimensions to who we are. And if you deny one of those three, you're denying the human condition, right? We all have to live with all three of them and navigate what it is to have these three aspects to our being, right? Okay, so IQ has to do with particularity. It's some shit that you have a certain amount of that you have in common with other people because you are good at taking tests and you have a certain ability, to use Nick Land's definition of intelligence, to solve and be good at games. Well, congratulations. Other people have other talents that make them have integrity and have them that gives them something to contribute to the world. And maybe you're sharper than other people in certain aspects. Congratulations, that's great. If you think that somehow that's metaphysics or ontology, then you motherfuckers need to spend some time doing ontology, because that ain't it. It's like trying to define people or classify people in terms of their height or in terms of how long their fucking hair grows or their musical preferences. It's particularistic shit. Ontology goes to the core, the essence of what it is to be a human, what it means to be an inanimate object, what it means to be a number, what it means to be a work of art. And Heidegger was great at this shit. Despite his flaws, he was somebody who thought in terms of modes of being. The artwork doesn't exist in the same way as the human, and the human doesn't exist in the same way as an object, and the object doesn't exist in the same way as a piece of equipment. These are different ways of being. They have their own structures, they exist in their own way, and you need to understand them on their own terms instead of trying to reduce one to the other. For example, if you try to reduce Dasein or a human to the being of an object, you're doing a violence against that person in the very essence of their being. They're not a fucking object, they're Dasein. It's kind of comical if you try to treat an object like a human, but the object ain't going to respond like Dasein. You can try to talk to your fucking lamp, and maybe schizophrenics do this. You can try to talk to your lamp like it's a person. It's not going to fucking be a person. Why? Because it exists in a different way than Dasein. I know this is philosophical shit 101, but you're in philosophy 101 now, motherfucker. So again, get your notepad. All right. So sameness in race. Okay, Nick Land wants to go, oh, the problem with you guys who deny race and want to talk about equality is that you just want to impose sameness on a field of difference. Motherfucker, you do the same thing. You just make 6 of them. Oh, there's white people, and then there's black people, and then there's Asian people, Middle East. What, you do this 6 times? So instead of me just imposing sameness and saying we all got shit in common, you do it with 6 groups. Well, okay, if I really want to champion difference, I'll say we're all singularities, motherfucker. That particularistic shit ain't shit. I'll just say that the 10 billion people on this fucking planet are differences, and that your racial categories are sameness imposed on huge groups of differences, which is to say individual human beings. Why are you going to reduce a black dude to another black dude? Why are you going to reduce a white woman to another white woman? You're imposing sameness. So what? Because you motherfuckers break the sameness down into 6 big groups, you're somehow champions of difference? Get the fuck out of here. That's a bullshit fucking argument. Because I can just take it to the level of the singular and say we're all fucking different. Don't try to categorize me in terms of a fucking race. But the problem is I don't have a problem with sameness because I don't have a problem with universality, but I also don't have an issue with particularity or singularity. You motherfuckers have a pathological reaction to somebody talking about sameness and universality when it's just part of our ontological makeup. Yes, there's universal. Yes, there's particular. Yes, there's singular. And if you motherfuckers think you're going to get outside of that, you're fucking delusional. You have a pathological political reaction rooted in your particular jouissance because you can't think in terms of universality. I can think in terms of particularity. I have no problem. I understand that there are particular groups. There's certain people who have things in common that they don't have in common with other groups of people. That's not a big problem for me to sort through. Big fucking deal. But you guys have a fucking mental breakdown if somebody brings universality or sameness into it. That's your fucking problem to work through, not mine. So look, it works like this. IQ is existential. Now, if you don't know Heidegger, you don't know what that means. I understand. But what it means is some particularistic feature about yourself that doesn't get to the core of your ontological structure. Okay? Existential has to do with the core of your ontological structure, and your structure is made up of different components. Heidegger calls them existentialia. I will list a few of them just for your knowledge. So as a whole, it's being in the world. But then there's being with, there's referential totalities, there's discourse, there's projection, there's Befindlichkeit, or state of mind. There's understanding, spatiality, discourse. I could keep going. Heidegger lists a bunch of these existentials or existentialia in being and
Dude,
time. And you know what?
the equiprimordiality of understanding state of mind and discourse as fundamental and as the ontological conditions of things like superficial, non-committal curiosity, idle chatter, and ambiguity. Like, that's fucking genius. And guess what? That kind of shit is, first of all, it applies to everybody. But second of all, it's not the kind of shit that any of these IQ nerds have ever seen on the internet can wrap their heads around. This is why I threw Walt Bismarck under the bus. Because it's like, I listened to the interview he did with Nina Power. He's just popping off dumb shit, dude. It's just stupid. It's actually just stupid shit. And like talking about game and how he has to be a high status male so he can get the chicks, and how he has to do Adderall so that he can get the high status chicks because he's IQ, dude. And it's just cringe. It's cringe. It's just, you guys are fucking losers. Okay. And the people who are over here trying to be like,
you don't have to be.
You don't have to be. You don't have, this is a treatable malady, everybody. But you just need to take notes when Mikey talks, maybe just for a couple years. Just for like
Take
a
notes
couple
when
years.
Benjamin talks.
You'll grow up. You'll grow up.
No, and
Rebecca.
it's like, man, it ain't even just Heidegger, right? You can do this with Kant. You can do this with Kant. You can think in terms of Deleuze. I'm sorry. There's motherfuckers who get at our universality in a non-pathological way. And I'm sorry. This is transcendental. It's not empirical. And spoiler alert, the transcendental will always kick the ass of the empirical, because we're talking about form, not content. And Marshall McLuhan understood this shit. Claude Levi-Strauss understood this shit. Lacan understood this shit. If you want to not be a fucking dipshit, you have to start thinking in terms of form and not just content. And if you cannot master that philosophical distinction, you're lost in the fucking ocean, bud.
It's a you problem. It's a you problem. And then Rebecca, and we got to close out in a second, but we'll all get a chance to say goodbye. But Rebecca, you're up.
Just the discussion of singular, like a universal, particular, singular, just reminded me of kind of a conversation I had a while back with a friend in San Francisco, where I was talking about the necessity, or like maybe not the necessity, maybe that's too strong a word, but the importance of coming to certain universal understandings of like, I don't know, our situation in the world and the situation of like people broadly, right? And they're not like, I'm reminded, because you're talking about people that are, you know, like trying to impose like some really hard category of like race and IQ and stuff like that, how they're anti-universal in some sense. And this person was also anti-universal. They're like, no, people in another country or in another culture are going to have a different perspective, and we need a multiplicity. Like it's pure there can be no totalizing attempt at finding some universal understanding of our situation. And I tried to make the argument, well, maybe someone in their particularity can find sort of an analysis of the universal from that particular position, right? That gets at something that is applicable to everyone. And like they were just like they were anti, you know, they're very much in that kind of like liberal left sort of mentality of like, what's it called? Like every different culture needs to think about their like have an analysis of their own particular interest in their own particular position, and that's the only kind of like way of getting into any like understanding is just this multitude of particulars. And I'm like, no, I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think that you can come to a universalist understanding, maybe even from a particular, that brings something valuable to the discussion of the universal from that stance, and that's still like a valuable position to hold. And they were just like, they would not hear it. Like they're not really into theory and stuff too, but like
It's
they're
dialectical. Yeah. Like, I mean, this is all dialectical. Everything, and I think it all goes back to what Benjamin was saying earlier. Like, some people just haven't learned to think dialectically. Like, they just think these are standalone things that have their own essence. They don't see how these things are in relation, and so it's like, oh, you have to choose a side between the universal and the particular. You have to. It's like, no, you fucking don't. That's cartoon-brained, two-dimensional, ridiculous. We don't have to. That's silly. But you know what? The problem is that, you know, most of us are like, you know, a little older. We've been around for a while. And then what we have random people come popping in, you know, and folks, look, I get it. If you've learned to not like the one side, then your side does make sense. But what this stream was ultimately about is the lesser evil bind is stupid. And just because the particularist approach is less bad than the mainstreamed universalist approach doesn't mean that the particularist approach is so great and that the both are dumb, right? No one here's doing the dumb thing. And so if you think that your shit's getting straw man, well, maybe it's so niche that we can't speak to it without having actually engaged it. But we're speaking to what we've surveyed up till now, which is a lot. But we're about to close out this stream. It's been so great having you all here all of this time. It's been absolutely wonderful. Folks on the call, anyone want to say any sign off? Amen. I would be remiss to say, or if I didn't say, say something. I said, titties out,
Swole
camera
here.
on. Let's
I'll
go.
say it. I'll say it. If Swole won't talk, I'll speak on his behalf. Swole, are you there? Speak. I summon thee.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
You're
Yes,
my
I'm here.
lemur. You're my lemur. I summon thee.
All right. What are we talking? We're talking about IQ. What are we talking about here? What's
Well,
the
we're
theme of
closing
the
out
stream?
now.
I'm talking. Well, real quick, I was going to read some of your responses to the neo-reactionaries talking about race realism on Twitter the other day. But since
Yeah, go
you're
for
here, well, basically to summarize, they're idiots and we're not.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Based. I don't remember what I said.
Here, I'll read one of them. Somebody said, when your senses detect someone of a different skin color or accent, your system will react with guardedness. That's just from evolution. And you said, nope, you literally made that up. Also, skin color isn't race. It's entirely determined by how close to the equator your ancestors lived. Idiot.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's not more complicated than that.
I love you, Swolt.
Thank you. Love you too.
Mills in the chat said, drunk theory is lit. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, guys. Any other closing thoughts here?
I might say one last little thing,
Yes.
which is just that you see the trouble, right? When you try to do philosophy or you try to do theory, you will always be encountering these people who negate one side or another of something. And then if we're not careful, everything we do becomes about negating the negators. And then that becomes itself a negation. And that's why while there's some stuff that we do that's public facing, there always has to be stuff we do off camera where we can't be harassed by people who negate things and are one-sided. Because when all you do is deal with that, then there's no possibility of thinking together with people across the dialectic and making advances. And this is part of how the whole culture has become stupid. Every time anybody tries to think, somebody comes along and negates a side of things and third rails or derails the whole conversation and all of the thinking so that nothing can possibly happen. You can't have a community of knowers. You can't have a people or a populos if people are doing that all the time.
And just to support what Benjamin said, look, this is the thing with land. Land has always been anti-dialectics. And all the guys on his neo-reactionary fucking side, they think they don't like dialectics because it's all about reckoning with contradictions and things. They want to escape. They just want to go their own way, right? That's bitch shit in my book. Like, no, you just don't want to deal with the contradiction. So instead of actually having to reckon with it, you just want to avoid it. I'm sorry, I'm fucking drunk. That's how Nick's acted about talking to Slavoj the whole fucking time. Is you don't want to have to reckon with somebody who can call you on your shit and say, oh, you believe in particularism. I actually believe in universalism. Let's actually dialectically engage in that. No, thank you. I don't want to deal with that. It's like, all right, dude, but Slavoj's up for the conversation. You're not. And if you want to say it's because you just reject dialectics, okay. But just know that into layman speak, that translates into you acting like a little bitch. That's what it means. Okay? Now, I'm not going to talk to somebody who has a different opinion than me. I'm just going to try to escape and avoid. All right, that's called bitch assness. Just so you know, for the record.
There's this statement that's kind of run havoc I think it might be Nicolas Gomez Davila. Like you hear people say this without really understanding it, but it's like a reactionary cannot prove or argue. I think it is. He can only invite. Like in a sense, I don't think it's just reactionaries. I mean, I think a lot of people have that impression that their real argument is not possible. There's only aesthetic presentation now, and I hope that's not true. I hope that's not true. You know?
Yeah, no, there is this sort of scientific relativism all across the political and religious spheres, all across this scientific and relativistic shit. It's all across. And then there's, of course, the biggest relativists are the ones who say, well, you can't know anything because everything's relative. So you just have to have faith in God. And that's what I do. And so it's like that. Well, and then they're like, oh, no, we're absolutists. You know, the Bible is the absolute truth. And it's like, yeah, but you made a decision and it was based off of your relative standpoint. So you're still in the same problem that you were and there are ways out of the hermeneutic circle, or if not out, at least into a better situatedness. Right? Like a better position in that hermeneutic circle. That's what we're trying to do here. But everyone, I'm several minutes past you. I've got to go.
Nick Land, I still love you in my own way, and I still want to talk about the King James Bible. Don't fucking hate me. You're still one of my theory heroes, despite my fucking talking about your bitch assness. I love you, Nick. Come talk to us again.
He's got a sense of humor. It's just his little fanboys who can't handle it. All right, everybody, take care.
We cannot do direct revolution, but the only way to lay the foundation for it is to do what you are doing to move the underground. It's a theoretically correct title.
Welcome to Theory Underground, a place for workers with earbuds who are tired of letting others read and think on their behalf, slipstreaming our way into an understanding of a situation that short-circuits the deadlocks of our moment.
Research at Theory Underground focuses on what is most important for understanding our current situation: theory of the subject, capital, time-energy theory, critical media theory, CMT, and the most essential critiques necessary for understanding why the theory, ideology, and common sense of influencers left to right misses the mark.
Theory Underground is coming to a city near you. What that has meant in the last year is traveling across the United States, into Canada, and then all over Europe to promote our books, courses, and ideas related to time energy and underground theory. You've been reading Underground Theory.
I'm a publisher and an editor. I run and review books. Literally, it's my living. This is the best editing collection I've ever read.
Okay, picture this scene. America, early 2021. An Amazon warehouse worker arises from the emerging underground theory internet scene to create spaces for untimely topics and concerns that are too often neglected or kept in isolation today. Joined by a revolving cast of underground theorists, academics, and critics, he establishes what will become Theory Underground, a teaching, research, and publishing platform by and for working class intellectuals, autodidacts, and academics who want to do more than they're able to do within the confines of academia. That warehouse worker's name is David McKerracher, and his book Time Energy is his first major contribution to the world of theory. It was recently reprinted with a foreword by none other than Slavoj Žižek, who also contributed to Theory Underground's latest book.
My Bible, it's an excellent book.
A collection of essays called Underground Theory.
What you just heard is an excerpt from the Strange Exiles podcast, episode 23, where Bram from Strange Exiles interviewed me and Mikey. For those who don't know, Mikey is the author of the Dangerous Maybe blog. We are publishing one of his books here shortly at Theory Underground. He's also a lecturer at Theory Underground, and he's someone I've been friends and a collaborator with for over 10 years. But most importantly for you all, he's a fantastic lecturer. I'm pausing this. I'm interjecting myself. I just wanted to say hello, everybody. That was a really fun stream. Thank you so much for participating. I just wanted to say this PSA is old. It was made in July. There's a new framework. There's a new subscription model. The cost for everything has gone up, so the prices are going up. And if you want to get grandfathered in at the current prices, then you just want to get involved now. Don't look at the fine print. Don't worry about what the tiers say they offer. Just know that you're about to get a lot more than what they say in the very near future. So we've got several people who've subscribed in the last few days. Just go to theoryunderground.com and click on Get Involved. Thank you. And it's a crime that he has to do wage labor right now. One of the long-term goals of Theory Underground has been now for a couple of years to hashtag free Mikey. That is something that I've been really pushing, but first I had to get freed from wage labor, which was achieved this year. That's right. Thanks to my monthly seminar subscribers, I was able to quit Amazon and do Theory Underground full time. Now I'm announcing the next big phase of the plan, which is the Mikey Down seminar. What monthly subscribers to the Mikey seminar are paying for is a survey of philosophy, including deep dives into Zizek, Land, Lacan, Baudrillard, Bataille, Lyotard, and ultimately the whole history of philosophy.
We're trying to build like this ongoing seminar, right? And that's what I really like about this thing. Where, you know, if I'm teaching a main text, that's something I got to focus on. I got to really, but the seminar thing, we can do this stuff all the time where we dive deeper into concepts, we dive deeper into certain, you know, sections of books or whatever, and we can really do this nuanced stuff.
I think that there's probably no better way for us to accelerate our learning in these areas than by slipstreaming Mikey. And that has been my belief for years and years and years now. It's official. You're able to help out. You're able to get involved. You're able to benefit directly from liberating him from wage labor. Get on it right now. Do it. Just go. Stop what you're doing. Go click the button, subscribe. This is what you do. Subscribe to him. If you're already signed up for the ongoing Theory Underground seminars, then that's the ones that I do with my wife, Anne. Though that's getting an upgrade, which means that I will be doing one session per month that is just me, and then I will also be doing the ones with Anne, which are a crash course in sociology, anthropology, the social sciences, and ultimately Marx, Heidegger, Levinas, Bourdieu, imminently critiquing pop psychology, sociology, self-help, and ultimately the doxa of our time.